What is like what are we doing? Like what is happening? What's up, everybody? Welcome to the latest Chillporeal. And, well, today's special guest is not a DJ, but he's DJRonnieG. What's going on, sir? Thank you for agreeing to do this.
It was a tough thing to agree to, but you are most very welcome for me graciously showing up here today.
Yeah, like it was hard to get DJRonnieG. He's got like a packed schedule and all that. So yeah, man, I appreciate you've been a member like almost from the very beginning of my channel. So I wanted to give you a nice little platform right here. And plus we haven't had a stream together in a long time. So I think the last time we did something was the Orville New Horizons, I think, wasn't it?
Yep, sounds about right.
Yeah, and you kind of, if I remember correctly, I think I brought you on. You kind of replaced Spock. Spock was supposed to be like a regular, but he couldn't make it to like 90% of them. So I brought you in. I brought you on, and yeah, you and Mike kind of filled in that hole.
That's funny. Spock is like my number one viewer. He was my number one viewer on Rumble.
Yeah, I haven't talked to him in a long time. I hope he's doing okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think he might have like reduced his Rumble presence, but yeah, did I see? That's a good question. I'll check up on him at some point because he's a cool dude, and I suspect he's all right. He's just probably getting ready for his Colonar ceremony, and then
Yeah.
Some gas cloud will probably send him a telepathic message and make him change his mind, and
It
he'll
could
be
be
back.
Colinar, it could be Ponfar. Ponfar takes 7 years, 7-year cycle. So who knows? Who knows what's going on?
At least he's getting some of that often, eh?
Yeah, there you go. All right, but I want to say hello to the chats. We got Robert Moore, member, thank you. Jacob Ironside, David Glenn, who says DJRonnieG sent me. So okay, well, welcome, David Glenn. I'm happy you're here. And Gadfly Fiction, what's up? So all right, but yeah, so it's been a while. So I just have to ask. Like, I'm curious. Like, I'm taking a trip down memory lane right now. I think the first time, how did you? Okay, I'm going to go even before that. How'd you get into space and astronomy and science fiction in general? We can start with space and astronomy because that's a big part of your wheelhouse. You do a lot of live streams, using like one of those digital telescopes, if I remember correctly.
Pretty much. Well, I got into space first on my original planet when my parents sent me away and they put me into space. And then I landed in a cornfield, but the farmers didn't want me, so my parents in New York adopted me instead. Now, jokes aside, how I got into astronomy and astrophotography is I don't know if it's an interesting backstory, but like, look, when I was younger, I couldn't really afford a telescope, but a while back in like, say, 2004, give or take a year, 2002 maybe, I got like my first Sony Handycam camcorder, which ran off of the 8mm or high 8 cassette tapes. And I was using that to look at Jupiter, because surprisingly, you could see Jupiter and some of its moons if you have like okay zoom on a camcorder.
So does it look like a star when you
Initially, yeah,
is it like flame or something?
Initially, it looks like a star, because it's a bright mother effing star, and that's because of its high albedo. Albedo being fancy speak for its clouds reflect a lot of light.
Okay.
And, so that's why it's so darn bright. And there's times of the year where it's at opposition from the sun, where, like, essentially the sun is illuminating one full side while it's in our night sky. So we really get a good, like, light return. But I was surprised, I didn't even know what I was looking at. I zoomed in on it, and then I started seeing other white dots next to it.
So I got a question. So I got a dumb question. I am a total normie when it comes to this stuff. I mean, I watch a lot of science fiction, but I'm a big normie when it comes to space and astronomy and the planets and all that, planetary bodies. Now I know gas giants obviously have high gravity. They're obviously really big. You know, they're like I think Jupiter makes up like over like hundreds of Earths or something. Like it's huge.
Yeah.
My question is now gas giants I don't believe have don't have surfaces, right? They don't have like solid surfaces. It's all gas.
It's a provisional yes to your question, because there are some interesting speculations about what would be at the bottom. I mean, for one, we know the pressures are going to be obscenely high.
Yeah.
And there may be like a solid ice core or some solid conglomeration of matter at the core, but for all intents and purposes, the vast bulk of a gas giant is most certainly gaseous. And one interesting speculation, some people believe that there might be a form of hydrogen. What the hell is it called? It's not solid hydrogen, not liquid, metallic hydrogen. So the theory is that if you put hydrogen under like enough pressure, it turns into a solid thing. And if you can create this, it would make really efficient rocket fuel. So some people speculate you have metallic hydrogen at the core, but for all intents and purposes, yeah, it's a big gas giant with humongous storms, right? Like if you ever seen the Voyager probe or Galileo imagery, in fact, it's a really cool animated GIF of Voyager approaching Jupiter, and it looks so cool. I mean, you know, like I'm sure this won't be a reused content issue at all. But now, jokes aside, if it would load. But yeah, I mean, like, so bottom line is you got like the Great Red Spot. That is a low pressure front right there. That is a hurricane the size of about 3 Earths.
Is that why I'm sure you've seen Picard season 3. Remember the Borg cube hid in the red eye of Jupiter?
I must not have been paying attention to that. Wait, was that in season 2?
No, it was Picard season 3.
Really? Oh,
yeah. Good. You didn't pay attention.
That happened. That's kind of cool. Except, I mean, it's like, look, in Babylon 5, they did a Jupiter friggin' scene in like I think season 4 during the Civil War, the Earth Alliance Civil War, and they had like an Omega class destroyer chasing down one of the White Star, ships, hiding in the upper atmosphere of Jupiter. And the fact of the matter was that they knew that they could shoot bombs at them and kind of keep them held up until they had to come up for air, but the Omega class destroyer certainly couldn't go too far into that atmosphere. And that was cool because they used that as they used a strategy which involved, I think, igniting some of the gas, which I don't know if that's actually something you could do, but it was pretty theatrical.
It's been a while since I've watched Babylon 5. I'll have to. What remember what season that was in? Was that season 3 or something?
It was definitely part of the Civil War arc, and it was during the kinetic part of the Civil War when what's his name, Sheridan was starting to come into the solar system to take care of business.
Oh, okay.
I'm sure I could track it down. And this is a picture I wanted to mention. So right here, this is like Voyager 1 making an approach to Jupiter, and it's essentially just a sequence of still images, but it just gives you an idea of like. It might be sped up a little bit, but you can see the storm clouds. You can see how like some are going in one direction, the other, and you can see the red spot is very hurricane-like as far as structures go. So I just thought that was kind of like it illustrates what Jupiter is in a sense.
So is Voyager 1 still out there, or is it Voyager 2 that's still out? Because I believe Voyager 2 recently, if I remember correctly, Voyager 2 is the one that left the solar system. Like it's out. I forget what they call that. What they call that region after where it leaves. I was reading up on like I went all nerd like maybe a year ago, and I was reading up on like what is beyond our solar system and all that. But before we even get into that, I need to address the chat. So first, Mr. Tickle Drunk, thank you for the $2 Canadian $2 super sticker, and Tatsusama, I thank you for the 5 members. So I'm going to have to say welcome back, Jacob Ironside, L. Dan, Mr. Zip, the Alpha Chad himself, who I had on last week. Definitely check out our stream talking about Tolkien and his Legendarium. And we got, Man of Manethrin. And I'm with Jacob. Thank you, Tatsusama. Thank you for being here, man. It's good to see you. And then we got Salty Traveling Sea for another 99-cent US dollar super sticker. Thank you, sir. So that was that's pretty cool. Thank you guys for doing this. So I have to once again re-welcome everybody into the fold. Let's see what's the best one to use. This one. Future Beverly Hills Cop retrospective and Future Beverly Hills Cop live watch. I'm planning the future, so keep an eye out for that. I just have to figure out when I'm going to do these things. So, but yeah,
That's
so
a fun movie.
that's a very fun. It was my first R-rated movie.
Really? Yeah,
Yeah,
I vaguely remember. I remember the scene. I think Eddie Murphy was rescuing kids from like a amusement park ride, and he's holding on to the rope with one hand.
that
And
was
my
part
dad.
three.
Oh, that was part. Wow.
So that was part three. So, and you know who was in that fucking movie? George Lucas was in that fucking movie.
Whoa.
I don't know if that was his wife he was with, but George Lucas made an appearance in that movie. He complains to Eddie that Eddie Murphy's holding up the ride. That was funny. And the other funny thing is the guy that owned the amusement park that Axel rescues at the end. That's Uncle Scrooge. Scrooge McDuck, the original Scrooge McDuck's voice, the actor Alan Young,
Oh
who was
yeah, I
in
remember him.
Mr. Ed, Mr. Ed the horse, that old little funny little sitcom right there. Yeah, that was him. So yeah, so you had a couple things. I was a kid when part 3 came out, and I actually saw that in the theater. My parents actually took me to see that. There was nothing. It was even though it was R-rated, there was nothing in it like compared to the first two. But yeah, everybody hates that one. I like it. It's a guilty pleasure. So
I thought I was watching part 1. I didn't realize I was watching part 3 when that happened, man. I'm so out of the loop of my movies sometimes, I gotta say. Well, I haven't
watched a whole lot of movies myself. Like I'm either doing, content creation, or I'm doing streams, or I'm focused on the show. So the show that I watched the last few weeks was Banshee, which is on Max. It's a fun action show. There's a lot of a lot of sex, a lot of violence, a lot of bad guys. Bad guys are bad in the show. Unlike like they could make a Star Wars show like this, maybe tone it down, obviously, with a whole bunch of bad guys being bad and a whole lot of subplots that actually pay off and all that. And it's not just boring, go from plot A to plot B to plot C and everything, which is what shows like Ahsoka have been doing in The Mandalorian. It's ridiculous. So, by the way, Orville Nations, or what's up,
Yo,
PJ? How you doing?
What up, PJ? Good to see him.
So
he's my number 4 favorite valued customer. In order of valued customers, like I've been experimenting. I might make a habit of doing Monday night and Sunday night streams, even though it's a school night, and I get Lady Mist showing up, so she's like an honored guest. I often see David Glenn, which is why I shouted him out as my favorite customer or something like that. Orville Nation shows up more times than I expect. He surprises me with he's a higher profile YouTuber right there showing up at my stuff. I mean, holy cow.
Yeah, he had what was the name of that one producer, from 24, who also produced the Orville? Came on his stream one day. I thought, and I was watching. I was like, dude, that's awesome. Brought him on. I didn't realize it was the same guy. I realized it was the same guy too. So I thought that was great. There was another guy that I followed. He was covering Star Trek Continues, and Vic Mignogna just showed up in his chat. I was so like, cool. Shit, I missed it. So, but yeah, that was. I thought that was great. But DJRonnieG, I wanted to ask you. So we went a little bit into space, but I want to know, how did you get into this part of the internet? Because I think I first met you in chat on Loki's streams. I think.
Yeah, and that's absolutely correct. And so many years ago, it had to be some years ago. And this is kind of a weird way to open up to a community, but basically what happened was I was Googling to satisfy my confirmation bias. I was kind of looking for answers to what did Cass Andvar of The Expanse do, and it looks like he may have been a little creepy with some girl, but he didn't molest anyone, but there may have been some justification for him being fired maybe. But in any case, I just wanted to hear somebody that wasn't blowing doing the whole patting each other on the back on Reddit type BS. So I stumbled into a live stream with some guy named Stone Loki. I don't know who this guy is, but I caught him on a replay the first time I watched him, and I was like, okay, at least he seemed like a bit of a breath of fresh air. And I kept watching him a few times on the replay. In fact, I was watching this man on the replay before I was watching him live, and basically that's how that started. And then when I was still working at Best Buy as a I can't find my badge right now. As a Geek Squad agent, I have a badge somewhere in my desk, but it'll be a shuffle mess. You can hear the desk. Yeah, we don't need that. So anyway, I was working at Best Buy, and I was experimenting with waking up like 5 a.m. Even if I didn't have to be at work till 10 a.m. It was some phase in my life where I decided I wanted to try this out. And so I'd be getting up 5 or 7 a.m. hours before work, so I'd have freedom to play computer games in the morning. So essentially what you would do after work, I was doing before work. And So that gave me an opportunity to be, in the chat consistently. And then at some point, some guy with a cool name, and I literally would say this a few times in the chat. I'm like, cool name, Nerdporeal life form. Because I was like, that's a cool name. It's like being, corporeal, non-corporeal, Nerdporeal. I mean, it works.
Yeah, I think, did I ever tell you how I came up with Nerdporeal or something? I was just walking one day and I was having fond memories of, and I have it. So I still have it right there. Actually, where is it? Right there. It's the 97 Star Trek Encyclopedia. So it goes up to Voyager season 3, and it goes up to First Contact. But yeah, I remember I read the entire thing. Like I think I was 8th grade or something. I read the entire thing and I learned what corporeal meant, and I non-corporeal, and like all the episodes they show like what aliens were non-corporeal. So like the Organians, the Trelane. I got a question. Do you think Trelane from Squire Gothos is a Q? Because I know there's a book, there's a book, and there's a novel from the 90s that kind of confirms that, but I'm curious.
I mean, I'm going to lean towards probably not, but it is a compelling fan theory. I like it as much as the Jar Jar as a Sith fan theory.
Yeah.
It's like, it's sort of like the other one, right? Like, is Vija a precursor to the Borg?
Yeah, and because I know a lot of people have covered it, especially with Picard season 3. But like the whole I actually read one of the few Star Trek books I actually read was the Shatner books, the Shatner verse. So you have Ashes of Eden, The Return, Avenger, Spectre, Dark Victory, Preserver, and those were the 6 I read. Mr. Shatner wrote a few more, but yeah, Captain Kirk comes back to life after generations. Everybody. So with Borg and with the help of the Borg and the Romulans working together. Ooh. Don't ask me how. I forgot most of the story, but he that's basically what happens. So so the Return basically covers how he comes back to life and he teams up with Picard to do stuff, and then it gets crazy with he meets his mirror universe counterpart. Tiberius survives and they fight or something. I forgot exactly what happened. But wow. But yeah, there was a lot, like there was like an Easter egg to it in Picard season 3 that I think the Popcast brothers showed. And I honestly, you know what, as much as I think Generations is probably my least favorite movie. What's weird is I still enjoy it despite the fact. Hold on.
What? Like, what about Insurrection?
I like Insurrection.
Okay, fair enough.
I was a kid. I was a kid when it came out. I saw it in the theater. It's a lot of fun, and when Worf, I forget, Data repeats something to Worf, like, "Hey, your boobs are getting bigger," or something like that's funny. And of course, he had the. I mean, it looks bad now, but I thought it was the coolest thing when they were shooting down all those drones those drones that were shooting little pics at the. The
transporter tags.
Yeah, those little transporter tags. I thought that was cool. You watch it now and it looks terrible. It looks terrible now.
I mean, that's like even a Star Wars. What do you call it? A prequel, especially Episode 1. I mean, it's like half of it is like watching a cartoon, like almost like watching Who Framed Roger Rabbit. You got these cartoon characters. I mean, granted they're CGI, but I mean, effectively, photorealistic color wasn't quite there yet when it comes to like artificial constructs.
Yeah. So like, I felt that way. I mean, that's one of the things I did miss when I did see the prequels, especially it was very apparent in Episode 2 when Obi-Wan goes and meets that one owner of the diner who's like the same alien as Pong Krell with the reptilian looking dude with like the 4, 5, or 6 arms or something like that. He gives him a hug, and it looked like he was just like you said, it looked like something out of Roger Rabbit, except Roger looked a lot better than that, though. In my opinion. That Roger Rabbit, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, is a great movie. Definitely watch it if you haven't seen it. But like the one thing I missed was the practical effects that the original trilogy had. I noticed that right away. So
it's a bargain to use CGI, but really the smart move is to combine or intersperse both methods together. That's where you get the best effects, like Nolan did with Interstellar.
Yeah. And David Glenn says, my favorite Star Trek movie is Galaxy Quest. Galaxy Quest came out. I think Galaxy Quest came out the year after Insurrection came out. I think it came out in '99, I believe. It was one of the last, if I remember correctly, it's one of the last movies of the 21st century.
I remember Auntie
or
Driven
20th
Jill,
century.
she did a stream about it, and someone mentioned that if you go and turn on the commentary track, they have a commentary track that I believe is almost entirely in an alien language. Whatever the
Really?
aliens are. Yeah, I forgot what they call the aliens in that movie. I'm sure somebody in the chat might know, but I'm pretty sure, yeah, I heard that.
You know what's funny is the aliens in Galaxy Quest kind of remind me. I'm curious if Enterprise kind of copied the look of those aliens. See you, Orville Nation. Thanks for dropping by. But those aliens in space, those bad guys, those bad reptilian aliens in Galaxy Quest. I'm curious if they were copied for Enterprise for the Xindi reptiles.
Oh yeah, maybe.
And maybe and maybe possibly the Orville. I mean, they're not exactly they're not much like the Krill, but I think the Krill is kind of a little inspired by them too. In the Krill and the I think it's the Krill, right? I forget. It's been a while since I watched the Orville.
Well, the Krill is the one that Seth MacFarlane was dating on the Krill homeworld. They had a whole insurrection plot.
Yep, the populism one. That one I thought was, it was the episode itself was fun, but like just it was a little ham-fisted about certain things. And there was one thing that they kind of like they were trying to make a point about a certain issue. I'm not going to get into that issue. And what's funny was they did the opposite effect. And it was actually an interesting idea that they pulled off with said issue. So, but I don't want to get into that because it's a very divisive one, and it's one that's people feel very strongly about. So, but yeah. So, question: how long have you been into? Curious, how long you've been into Star Trek? I mean, you've been watching Star Trek probably as long as I have.
Lifelong Trekkie, born in '86, and before I can comprehend what I was watching, my parents was watching TNG, and of course, my brother being 3 years older than me, he started getting cool toys before I did. Like he had a shuttlecraft, and then when the shuttlecraft was missing the doors, he put GI Joes in it. But that being long story short, I eventually started getting cool Star Trek toys for Christmas. But I'd say like when I really started loving Star Trek was probably around third grade, fourth grade, when that's when I discovered I liked it a lot for some reason or another. And that was around the time I started watching the rerun tapes from the because my dad would record the Star Trek marathons, right? Like that's an easy way. You don't have to rent them if you could record a freaking 10-hour block right there. I mean, we did rent them too, but
I think roughly, I think you got, I was right. We got, because I'm a couple years, I think I was born in '84, so I'm a couple years older than you. I got into it roughly around that same time. I was in sixth. I think I really got into, especially the original series. I got into it in sixth grade. I used to collect those blue VHS tapes, those 90s American issued. So there was an 80s issued VHS tapes. And believe it or not, The Cage first came out. The first pilot, The Cage, came out in 1986 initially. It was never aired. The first episode was never aired. The only parts of The Cage that you saw aired was Menagerie Part 1 and Menagerie Part 2. And so if you watch The Cage, the color segments of that episode were what was in the Menagerie. The black and white stuff was not in the Menagerie. So, and then Mr. Roddenberry had a little introduction, a little 2-minute introduction. And his introduction was kind of inaccurate because The Cage was not he was talking about diversity and all that. The Cage wasn't a very diverse episode. It wasn't really until later in season 1, or actually season 1, where it started to get more. You started to see more different diverse peoples, and it you had Uhura's first appearance was in the Corbomite Maneuver, production wise. The Corbomite Maneuver was it was the first regular episode produced with the normal sets and everything. The only difference was Uhura wore yellow outfit instead of the red outfit, and they couldn't air it right away because and I had this stream. I read this preparing for Gray Wakizashi's Star Trek things. I hope will redo those again. But I read that there was a lot of work with a lot of optical work that wasn't complete, and that's why they had to push it all the way to November. So that's why, because the Corbomite maneuver had Sirius. They had all these. They had all these. They didn't have. It was a bottle episode, but there was a lot of effects.
Yep.
Like there were ships. Like if you saw a ship in the original series in the in the 60s, that was expensive shit. Like that was not easy to do, and that took a lot of work to put in. So there was a lot of times where, like in Arena, they say, hey, there's an unknown ship here, and then the Enterprise is firing, but you don't see what the Enterprise is firing at, because we never see the Gorn ship until the Blu-ray. The Blu-ray, they add a very quick shot, and we see the Gorn ship far away, but we see the Gorn ship. Same with the Klingons in Errand of Mercy. We did not see the Klingon ships in the original version of Errand of Mercy, even though there was supposed to be a fleet there. Well, actually, they get attacked in the opening, in the cold open, and then when they when they're at Organia, and they're there too long, then a whole fleet comes and they're all firing at the Enterprise. So we see the torpedoes hitting the Enterprise, but we don't see the ships where those torpedoes came from until the Blu-rays. So like
was it the Blu-rays? Because I remember like CBS Digital did a bunch of work in 2005. Is that what went into the Blu-rays, or did they do even more work after that?
Yeah,
it was beautifully done. I do remember watching reruns on TV and seeing the planet look really good, and I was saying, "Wow, man, I didn't realize the special effects looked that good." And then I found out later I was watching the remastered, or that enhanced one with the extra, cut scenes and replacing the old effects, and some of it was done faithfully well. Like when they try to fire a phaser, they didn't overdo it. They still kept the old look. So I got to give them props. Like they respected the original look for the most part.
Yeah, that's true. And not only did they do that, there were times where the original series had to repurpose and reuse stuff. They had to reuse matte paintings. So usually you'd have a matte painting, and then you'd have them put overlay it with film of the actors moving around it or something. There were points where they had to reuse matte painting. So the Delta Vega matte painting from the second pilot on before was reused in Dagger of the Mind. Yeah, that's it. See, DJRonnieG has it. Used in Dagger of the Mind for the Tantalus colony. In the Blu-ray, they made a new background. Like they made a whole
Mother, now can you hear me? You can hear me now, right? You know why I mute so much? Because I have my mechanical keyboard installed. So as I was the Vega dilithium cracking station, and we have Brian back just in time for me to mistakenly mute my audio again.
Sorry about the little internet hiccup. My bad.
I'm just glad it's you and not me.
Yeah, well, luckily it didn't kick you out. So this happened. This has happened before. So, but yeah. Gray's here too. What's up, Gray? Wakizashi.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we're talking a little original Trek here. We have to continue original Trek with you, or rediscovering Star Trek. So what are you saying? DJ RonnieG?
Oh no, I was just kind of keeping things afloat while you were away when you were cut off mid-sentence, and so I was going to just talk about what little I knew about the Delta Vega dilithium cracking station. I do find it very weird that they would leave this entire facility unattended, like in the middle of nowhere. Like you would think somebody would have a job there at least, you know?
I think they said it was all automated. I think they
Oh
said
yeah.
the entire operation was automated, and they didn't like people didn't show up for like every 5 years or something.
Oh, that makes some sense actuk. Yeah,
Yeah.
they
So
did say that. Yeah.
and I think they or maybe I mean the what they used in Star Trek 2009 did not resemble Delta Vega. I mean it was where they I think they it's where Nero and that Borg looking mining ship. Don't ask me how that's some fucking mining ship, but hey, um, they marooned Spock or Leonard Nimoy on Delta Vega, and it just looks like Hoth. It just looks like
Yes.
Hoth. It has and then other Spock maroons Kirk onto, and that's how Kirk meets Spock, or sorry, Kirk meets Leonard Nimoy Spock, and Kirk gets chased by a monster because we have to have monsters chasing people. Yep, that's the monster. And then there's an even bigger monster because they had to do there's always a bigger fish joke from Phantom Menace. So
They did steal that one. Yep.
they did. So, but I'll be honest, that movie at the time, I was really happy because I just loved seeing. I was happy to see Leonard Nimoy play the character Spock on the screen for the first time because I was too young to see the early Star Trek movies. Like Undiscovered Country came out when I was 7, and I wasn't even into Star Trek at that point. I was aware it existed. But it was just a boring show where people talk and sit down in outer space, and I didn't know what was going on. So, but then I was a sweet summer child then. So,
Hmm.
and
But yeah, I
Robert
did
Morris
enjoy
says good
seeing
night.
them.
Good
You
night,
can't leave
Robert.
us. You can't leave us. No, I'm kidding. See you later, Robert Moore.
Maybe it's something I said. I can change, Robert. I can change. So,
But yeah, I enjoyed Star Trek 2009 on its own standing, and I thought the sound effects sounded great on surround sound headphones. But when they kept going with it, I felt like it was rapidly running out of steam. I would have been more respecting of it if, like, it stayed in its own lane. But people tried to use the Kelvin as an excuse to like justify all of the atrocities that came after, such as Discovery and Picard, and
yeah,
it's not right.
yeah, and like another big reason why I wanted to start my YouTube channel was that it seemed like younger people only knew the J.J. Abrams films and not the classic
Yeah,
shows.
it's funny you mentioned that. I remember a girl at work. She was saying, "Oh, I love Star Trek," and then she started talking about Christian Cumberbatch. I was like, "Oh, you like that Trek? Gotcha."
Yeah, I mean, I was okay with it initially, but then Into Darkness comes out, and I mean, I was okay with it initially, but looking back at it, I mean, are Khan and Spock like or not even Khan? Sorry, John Harrison. I refuse to say that he is Khan. He is not Khan. There's only one Khan, and that's Ricardo Montalban. Um, but they're freaking. There's a chase because these movies always have to have chases because Star Trek was known for its chases, right? Like how many times has William Shatner been chased by a monster, or he'd be chasing a bad guy or something? The only time I ever recall ever seeing William Shatner run as Captain Kirk was in the episode Shore Leave, and that was the episode where they go onto the planet. There, it's amusement park planet. Anytime they think of something, it appears, whether it's a person or
Yep.
a weapon. So so they hear gunshots, and that's when they start running, and they play this really dramatic music. And it looks funny. Seeing William Shatner run as Kirk in that tight uniform is just one of the funniest things ever. It looks it looks so stupid, but I forgive that. But that's the only time I can recall. Yeah, and the rabbit from I use that clip quite a bit in my videos as a joke. My latest video I did that too.
It
But
works.
yeah, but yeah, that's the only time you see Kirk run, or William Shatner's Kirk run after somebody. I mean,
Interesting. Yeah.
I don't think he's ever been chased or
Yeah.
anything like that. But then you see Chris Pine as Kirk for 3 movies, and he's always being chased. He's always being, it's like a Star Wars movie
Mhm.
almost. Like
I mean,
just
it's a cerebral experience to watch Star Trek. It's not completely devoid of action, but yeah, I mean, Star Wars does have it, with those close-up action shots. They do have that fast-paced stuff going on, whereas Star Trek, it is like a ship maneuvering and doing sweeping turns and stuff like that. They've kind of gotten better at it. Voyager put more emphasis into the action. Enterprise, I enjoyed tremendously, although I think I had to watch it twice before I really respected it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I mean, I've because of especially because of Discovery and Picard and New Trek lately, it's really soured my liking of what do you call it, the Abrams films. Because I mean, Beyond was okay. I thought there were, I mean, I went and saw Beyond. I mean, it wasn't anything spectacular at that point. I was getting kind of getting sick of those type of movies. I kind of wanted to go back to form. Or I was actually, when 2016 was going on, and it was the 50th anniversary, and I went with a buddy of mine. We actually went to see the 50th anniversary concert. Dude, you hear that music live. You hear some of the best music across the franchise. It had tears in my eyes, and that it's a concert, and it's two parts. So so there's an intermission. Can you guess which piece they used for the intermission?
I think I vaguely remember hearing this. I'm going to say it was the one from the '09 movie. Da 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 da. That one.
No, you know how they went to the intermission? They played the end of Best of Both Worlds Part 1.
Ooh.
Dun dun dun, ba 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 dun dun dun, ba 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 dun dun dun.
Wow.
You're like,
That's
my buddy and I were like, we were doing it. I mean, we were just like, bah, bah, bah. They were like, we're all going nuts. I was going nuts.
That's actually pretty cool. Yeah. Because they did that on Family Guy once. They had an episode and they played that type of music, and then they put the blue font with the italicized text "to be continued."
Yes, I did that with the Wheel of Time streams I've been doing. So whenever, because the book club type of deals, it takes more than one stream to cover, especially the books, because Robert Jordan writes like these are big thick books. I got them right there. They're thick. And it takes more than one stream. So I wanted to do something fun. I wanted to do a cliffhanger type, a dramatic cliffhanger. Like, what's the most dramatic cliffhanger ever? Best of Both Worlds. So I got the music. I created the credits and all that. And I came up with an idea, and I used it. And I used it in most of my part 2s and part 3s and everything. So I incorporate a lot of Star Trek into my Wheel of Time book club streams.
Wow. So, those are the streams I've been avoiding just because I don't want to spoil it. But at the same time, I think I need some spoilers to keep me hooked. Someone kind of gave me some hints. They said it's sort of like a travel log for the first couple of books.
Yeah.
So, I'm giving it a chance,
The first book is very fantasy. So it's very fantasy, where they're traveling around. There's a point where they do get separated, and they encounter a whole bunch of weird creatures and beings. They're ancient or something that we don't know about, and that's basically the first book. And there's a final fight at the end that leads into something else, and that leads into another thing, and it builds to the end. It builds to the end, and then you're just like, whoa, this dude is no joke. And then the second book takes a very different turn. The second book is they're pursuing somebody, trying to get something back that's very important. And what happens is this, as they're chasing this person and his band. I'm not going to say who this is. They come across a whole bunch of weird shit, like murders and time loops and everything. There's literally a point where there's like a time loop, and there's another point where, let's just say there's more worlds in the Wheel of Time, especially the second book, The Great Hunt, than where they're living. There's points where they experience multiple paths of their destiny. There's a point that it's called Flicker. I'm just gonna say it's called Flicker. There's points where they are in different versions of their lives, different universes or something. It's the best. It's probably the best part of that book.
it's not sci-fi, but it's got a sci-fi-ish theme or something going on in there. I mean, this could fit under the realm of magic, basically, right?
I think Robert Jordan was a Star Trek fan. I mean, he was a Vietnam vet. He was a heavy reader, but I think he was a big science fiction fan.
See, that's what I need in order to get me interested. I appreciate that because you didn't even spoil it, but you gave me something to like make me give a shit, honestly. Because like one of my favorite books, the book that got me into recreational reading is The Hyperion Cantos by Dan Simmons.
Okay,
And-
yeah, I don't know anything about that. So
I got it.
do the same thing. Give me give me some crumbs that will,
Oh,
that-
I will. I'll give you some great crumbs here. I want to see if I can find my upscaled images real quick. If I can't, that's okay.
And before we go any further, I need to read this Nosferatu Vampire, member for 4 months. He says, I love the Wheel of Time almost as much as I love Godporial. Yeah, he didn't come up with that name. I came up with that name because I am so full of myself. Okay, that's not true. Or maybe it is. I don't know. But I've been told by people on Twitter to get over myself because I think a certain show is not as good as they say it is. And I want to also say hello to Donnie. What's up, Donnie? Or
Don Ranger Power.
Yeah. So I still have not watched that Power Ranger special. I think it's a 30th anniversary special. Yeah, 30. It's the 30th anniversary special that they're put on Netflix. I have to check it out. I know that. I mean, obviously, I think they only got 2 of the actors. They only got David Yost and Walter Jones, the original Black Ranger and original Blue Ranger. So, obviously, Red Ranger Austin St. John, I think, is having legal problems. Jason David Frey, unfortunately, took his own life last year, and they didn't even. Of course, the original Yellow Ranger, Toy Trank, got killed in an accident about 20 years ago. And then and I think Amy Jo Johnson asked for too much money. Pink Ranger. So, but hey, I still will definitely check that out. Definitely want to watch it. So,
but yeah, I wanted to catch up on the OG Sentai, and at some point I will. But like that's something that I watched some clips recently. But getting to the Hyperion Cantos, so where do I begin? Well, basically what got me into it was a late book spoiler. So I don't think that's going to be really a good thing to start with. But you got a villain in the book known as the Shrike. And that is the Shrike right there, as you can see, and he's
do you think they stole, because the name of Vadic's ship in Picard season 3 is the Shrike?
They might have, but it's like, it's like they can only steal the name, right? You can't really, nothing else about it is Hyperion related. Like, they couldn't, make it great but maybe it was inspired. But also, do you know what a Shrike in real life is? It's a bird that impales its prey on a branch. And then eats it later, I think. But
does it have a long bill or something like that? That a pointed bill that allows it to impale the.
I don't know, but I've seen pictures of dead birds on dead animals, rodents, staked onto a tree branch. In fact, this is one of the things in Hyperion, the Shrike's mythology. In the mythology of the Shrike, they say that it takes victims and puts them on the Tree of Thorns. And so, in some of their mythology of the so-called Shrike Church or of the Shrike Cult, or the Church of Final Atonement, the Shrike does this. And at some point, someone experiences a flashback and potentially at some point ends up being impaled on this Tree of Thorns along with a bunch of other unlucky bastards. And, in this case, it's doing to these humans what this bird does to prey.
So it looks like a demon. There's nothing. Is it just an alien, or is there something supernatural about it?
On the planet Hyperion, and they tell you this very early, there's an area known as the Time Tombs. And there's some history associated with the Time Tombs. In fact, there's people who are part of a certain religion, and they sort of go in groups in suicide, in groups of people that, delete themselves, but it's more like they let the Shrike delete them. And if you have a prime number amount, it has to be a prime number group of people, and one of those people will get to survive. But essentially, they all show up, they make a wish, the Shrike maybe grants it or kills them or makes them disappear. But at one point, one of the first book is sort of like the Canterbury Tales. You got the priest's tale, you got the poet's tale. The poet's tale is this drunken poet named Martin Silenus, and he's a famous poet throughout the World Web. Now, what is the World Web? Now, this doesn't answer what the Shrike is, but the World Web is a critical element or a critical aspect of what we get in Hyperion. And I think to show you that, we'll show you some famous locations. So this is like sort of like a rendition of the River Tethys.
That looks very fantasy.
This is the what was it, the Kronos Keep, I believe, which is at the top of a mountain. So on the way to do the Strike pilgrimage,
That looks like Boreth, the Klingon world, the Klingon moon or something that has the the monks and all that, the monks of Kalas.
Kind of reminds me of that. They have a cable car as transportation up there over the mountains. And this is just one of the stops because you got to go over the mountains and then on the other side you go back down. But essentially there's a mountain pass in the middle of the pilgrimage, and big parts of the pilgrimage you can't land in the Valley of the Time Tombs with a ship. For whatever reason, the ships will land there, but when they land, the crew won't be on the ship. So if you try to take a ship there, you'll disappear. Nobody knows what happens. That's just one of the mysteries. So in order for people to go there, whether on their own for research or as part of a pilgrimage, they have to take the long way. They got to take basically like a barge, a sail ship, and this cable car thing, and hike on foot. And so the world web in Hyperion is refers to the basically planets that are connected by Farcaster portal. And so you got a government known as the Human Hegemony, or the Hegemony of Man. And why can't I zoom it? There we go. The Hegemony of Man. And one of their biggest cities is called Tau Ceti Center, for example, or TC Square. It's like basically like Coruscant. And they have like these like 300-foot or 300-meter forecaster portals for ships and things to go to different planets. And you got smaller ones.
So that's how ships transport over vast distances is through these portals right here.
They also can jump, spin up the quantum leap, or basically they use what they call a Hawking drive, which is effectively a hyperdrive. But Forecaster Portal is ideal because once you have planets, at this point in the book, you have 200 planets connected to inducted into the world web. So you have 200 planets that you can walk over to, and if you're really wealthy, you can have like doorways in your house. So you can have a multi-planetary home where you walk through a doorway and you're on the desert planet. You walk through another doorway and you're looking over a beautiful forest. You walk into another doorway.
So if you're rich enough to have a second home on another planet, you can just go through that gate in your home to your other home.
And essentially you'll have rooms that span 5 or 10 planets at times, yeah.
Oh, shit. Oh.
Yeah, so that's kind of wild on its own. And so now, of course, in the world web, you'll have a universal card that lets you, emits access through the forecaster portals, but effectively you can use it maybe to go to school on a different planet or something like that. But this society is so connected, like people would take it for granted. I mean, unless you are really poor and you can't afford that. Now, the River Tethys is a river that has forecaster portals. It spans throughout the entire world web, but the difference is it's almost like a random shuffle. And so you can go on vacation or something like that. And as you're going on vacation on this river, you will be passing from a desert planet to a jungle world, and some cool stuff like that. So they have a lot of weird things going on. And so that's just one key element, is that world web connected by forecaster portals. But if you go through a ship, but remember, somebody has to explore a planet first and drop, put the forecaster portal over there. They have to build, the infrastructure to enable that to happen. And I won't spoil how they do that because it is covered quite well in the final chapter of the first book. But bottom line is that to use a Hawking drive, even though technically, and most of the time, faster than light travel will not cause time dilation in Hyperion, they do have it as a plot device. Dan Simmons, the author, refers to it as time debt. But it works. I mean, it works because he doesn't have to use the real, relativity physics. He could just kind of make up an arbitrary figure and say, time debt is, 3 month journey, you just lost 3 years. Or in one point in the book, they're taking a trip to a planet that's like a couple of months away, but they're losing 3 years. When everything's said and done, 8 years has passed away round trip on your home world, for example. And so now you come back to your home world and everyone is 8 years older than you are, or you're 8 years younger than everybody else.
You said because of relativity? Time dilation?
Similar to relativity, but the problem is that because it's a hyperdrive, you shouldn't experience or be subjected to relativity, but I'm willing to let it slide because, we don't even know, it's a soft science fiction into that.
Because I know the Ender books are like that.
Oh, dude,
you travel.
Was an interesting series.
You travel. You travel somewhere. Next time you see your sister or something, like in Ender's case, they're both older, or she's older, or he's older.
Yep.
I forget how it goes.
Well, like, yeah, and that was a fun series. So I'm trying to remember at what point he gets subjected to time dilation. Because, of course, I think it happens it does happen after, like, the second Formic War, or, basically the events of the movie. And what was interesting was Ender's Game was written almost like a prequel, but yet it got way more popular. Whereas, like, I think, Orson Scott Card really wanted to focus on, Speaking for the Dead and everything that happened thereafter. But, I think as far as, making movies goes, Ender's Game works better as a simple movie,
Yeah. I do have on my Kindle, I do have the first Hyperion book. I have a whole shit ton of books. I have a whole shit ton of first books and a whole bunch of series. But yeah, I do have Hyperion. I do have the first Hyperion Cantos book. Where is it?
And it, like, the book is good. The audio version is good. Some people like to, one thing that's cool is you can read with Kindle books. You can often read the book and resume the audio book, and then go back and resume from whatever chapter you left off.
Yeah, it's so weird that it does that, but yeah, it's pretty cool.
And so, like, with Hyperion, they have a pretty much multi-person cast for the first book, and it is very well done. But some people complain about one of the female characters sounding robotic, and it turns out she's a voice actor who does TV commercials. And yeah, so you haven't started it really, right? Like, I would say if you haven't started it, now maybe don't do this if you don't want to read it right now, because you don't want to, lose your time to other things. But I would say start with the prologue, because that's what got me reeled in. After reading a spoiler on Quora, how I found Hyperion was I went on Google, I looked up how do inertial dampers work in Star Trek and Star Wars, and realistically they don't. But one of the answers was somebody mentions that Dan Simmons' solution to them in the Hyperion Cantos, and this happens late in this series. I don't think I'm ruining much by saying this. A future Catholic Church obtains a alien parasite that resurrects people from the dead. So the Catholic Church has a monopoly on a fleet of ships that can go faster than light, but it turns you into raspberry jam during acceleration and deceleration, amongst other things.
So the Catholic Church is in the Hyperion books?
But here's the thing. In the first book, they are largely irrelevant. And so that's why when I heard this spoiler, then I'm reading the book, I'm like, okay, there's a priest here. He's doing stuff, but this church is a dying church. And so I'm trying now, I have to wait like at least like a book or two before figuring out how they get big.
Is Earth so if the Catholic Church is in this, then is Earth a thing in this
I can't
universe?
really, I'm not going to tell you much about Old Earth.
Okay.
You're going to have to figure out what happened to Old Earth, or what happens to Old Earth. But it is
but it does take place in our
yeah,
galaxy.
It definitely does. It's not, Earth is not ignored. It is definitely spoken about. There's a lot of nostalgia about Earth and a lot of mystery revolving around what did happen to Earth. Some people think that a team in Kiev built a black hole that accidentally gobbled up the Earth from the inside out, but people aren't so sure if it was if the AIs who were helping them did it, or if it was by accident, or if the AIs did it on purpose to be dicks, to help spur our development, because being on one planet, we were stagnant. Being on multiple planets, we sort of kind of were inspired to, maybe invent more or some crap like that. I don't know. I guess I'm being very vague here on purpose.
All right, well, that's fine.
And like what got me really like one of the first things in the book, which I don't know why I don't have a cool picture, but there are cool pictures of the tree ship Yggdrasil. And basically there's a group called the Templars, and the Templars have like a handful of tree ships, and it's literally a tree that they genetically modified on their own planet known as God's Grove. It's like basically a forest world, and they use force fields and aliens that can help manage force fields to basically keep the air, and it's mostly like a luxury cruiser.
There's a big fantasy element here, like Yggdrasil from freaking Norse mythology. Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, so they got a lot of that fantasy stuff interspersed. So, I mean, like, that's just like a micro, I don't want to ruin anything, but yeah, that's some of what I like, what got me into Hyperion. And I can't believe I don't have the coolest picture of the tree ship, because there are some cooler pictures in that series. You got the consoles.
Was that fan art that you showed, or was that
yeah, these are all basically fan art. And I think the picture I had that I can't find right now is a better, representation. Mm-hmm. But then also you got the main character. He's got a ship that looks like a vertical rocket ship. And when you see renditions of this ship, a lot of times it'll be shown sideways and wrong. This is like one of the few correct ones. essentially it's got a hull that morphs to create a staircase or a balcony. And then like the prologue of the book, this guy's sitting on a jungle planet where he just finished going. He's a former diplomat. He's a consul of the hegemony.
Yeah.
And he's sitting on a dinosaur world. Just got back from dinosaur hunting, and he's sitting down.
So dinosaur hunting's a thing in this book, in this series.
Well, that's the thing. So you got these people called honest, and DNA or RNA honest. I think instead of artist, they're honest, or they do onying. Essentially, they engage in gene tailoring, and so they basically brought dinosaurs back to life on old Earth, and then I think they seeded them on a couple of worlds throughout. Not necessarily part of the world web, but they put them on outback worlds. So you got the world web that are connected. You got worlds in the outback. Hyperion happens to be an outback world, and so what that means is that to get there, you have to go to like one of the nearest planets. So you go to a planet called Parvati, which is like named after an Indian word, and then from Parvati, you gotta incur basically like 4 years of time debt to get to Hyperion.
Okay.
And a lot of other worlds are like that. And so the consul, he was given a ship as a gift for his diplomatic services, and that ship enables him to go off of the beaten path.
When were these published? Were these published in the 90s or 2000s?
1989 was the first book, and then it was published all the way up through 1997. There's 4 main books: Hyperion, Fall of Hyperion, which I can give you a hint of what happens there, Endymion, and Rise of Endymion. And essentially you got a time jump between the in the middle of that set, you have a big time jump. And then after Rise of Endymion, there are indeed a couple of short stories that I should really kind of organize them. I've been meaning to do like a video just so that I could kind of give a definitive guide like of everything in chronological order, because once you finish it, if you're looking for more, like all you have is a couple of short stories at that point.
So do these books so is there different characters in each of these books then? It follows different characters?
Yes and no. In the first book, you definitely have your core group of characters, and essentially it's following them around like the Canterbury Tales, right? In the second book, most of those characters are all still there, and a couple of additions are thrown in there too, except in the second book where people get disappointed, they enjoy the style of the first book, because it's like you got a priest, a Jesuit named Father Paul de Rey, who basically gets exiled to Hyperion, and he sets up an ethnological research station to study a group of people that people don't even know if they exist, called the Bacura. Anyway, bottom line is that he decides to study these people who are known to be like mentally not smart, like literally, like it's like he goes out to the middle of nowhere. And in the second story, like I said, Drunken Poet, you got a guy who's a Colonel Cassad, who's literally a colonel from the military. And for whatever reason, all of these like 6 people are on the same ship going on a strike pilgrimage. And one of them is a Jewish guy. And he's like, I'm a Jew. What am I doing here? So they all decide like after dinner that, hey, maybe we should spend some time sharing each other's stories. And that's how this becomes a story where all of these characters are each throughout the 6 chapters taking turns telling their respective stories of what their reason is for being part of this group, why these unlikely participants joining this pilgrimage, because they're not really, and none of these people would have otherwise been interested in this type of thing.
It sounds very compelling. It sounds very interesting. Maybe so I'm on book 4 of Wheel of Time. I'm actually focused on this one. I might take a break and read something else. You're selling me on Hyperion, and you're not the first one. I've heard about Hyperion from multiple people, so I've heard nothing but good things about it.
Yeah, so. I mean, they got cybernetic hybrids. They got like AIs living in something called the Technocore, but they can actually create biological bodies and upload consciousnesses into that body. So they got a lot of cool shit going on.
Yeah, definitely. I'll definitely have to. I'll probably. I mean, based on what I'm seeing right here, it looks very interesting. So, but yeah, thanks for sharing about Hyperion. So definitely, I would definitely recommend if you ever, make some lore videos. People love lore videos.
Yeah,
make some lore videos for Hyperion. I don't know if people have done it. I've been telling Prophet to do, stuff for Cosmere, Brandon Sanderson stuff. So, but yeah, so, but. To kind of move this along, let's go back to the like you said you discovered Loki and all that. What was it? I forget what was it. Was it What did you
Yeah,
say it
so
was that really got? Well, like, I mean, for for me, when I really started, paying attention to YouTube and looking for other people that felt the same way. At first, it was The Force Awakens, and then what was really interesting was how people. I initially didn't respond bad to The Last Jedi initially, because I really wanted to like it. I really was hoping like this was going to be, this was going to, make Star Wars, good. And then I was looking at the reactions, and I was like, huh. And then I was reading like long reviews, and then I actually went back and watched the movie, and everything that was said, everything that was complained about was accurate, was very accurate. And so after that, and then I've tried to rewatch it after that. I actually bought the Blu-ray initially. I watched it once and then I got rid of it. I watched it once, and then Rise of Skywalker came out, completely like that, just completely ruined everything, and I got rid of all Disney Star Wars. I don't there's no Disney Star Wars in this shelf right here. So but yeah, it was really Star Wars that really got me noticing the decline of Hollywood and everything. So the Star Trek stuff, I didn't really. It's the same thing with the Star Trek. Like I tried to like it. I knew it was going to be different. There were just points where it just didn't make sense. It was, and the stuff that really got my attention was the lore breaking shit.
Yeah, look, dude, when they fucking destroyed Vulcan, that like was like where I drew my line in the sand, and like, especially when they tried carrying that bullshit over to like fucking Picard, I'm like, this is like no, I was not. You can see I'm enraged. Yeah,
yeah. Yeah, I like right now because of that, and this is all because of 2009. J.J. Abrams, like he goes into a franchise that he didn't start, and all of a sudden, right away, and he alternate version, alternate universe, because that's what they do, and let's destroy a planet like Star Wars, except instead of a giant sphere with a space laser, you have this creepy looking mining ship, which is clearly not a mining ship. It's basically a Borg ship. It's basically a Borg. It's a Borg ship with teeth.
I get the logic. Like it's got a drill for mining minerals and stuff like that. So they're using the mineral drill, but then the ship is obscenely larger than anything that would be economically necessary for mining.
Like the Star Trek Countdown thing, it's larger than the Enterprise E. And the Enterprise E is the flagship of the Federation in the late 24th century.
That's the problem. So people like will try to justify it. They'll say, "Oh, well, that's because of the Kelvin timeline shift that Starfleet." The people really try to bend. And look, I understand. Like, people want to. Maybe some people want to love it enough. They're trying to bend over backwards. And I've been making rationalizations for Star Trek for years. But Same here. Like people, but I'm not going to bend over backwards on behalf of Abrams's, sensibilities now. Especially like all they have to do is respect the Prime timeline and not try to lie and make believe it's like separate. And it's funny, when Picard came out, there was an expectation set like that this would take place in the Prime timeline. What they didn't say was that we are redefining the Prime timeline as the one that has forever been altered by this crap.
Yeah, because not only did they destroy Vulcan in the other timeline, they destroyed Romulus in the Prime timeline. Like who the fuck are they? Who the fuck are they to destroy Romulus? Romulus is a big player in Star Trek. Like,
and also, I don't even understand like how the destruction of Romulus would affect the rest of the Romulan Star Empire in the way that it seems to have affected it. I mean,
and they've never explained it. There's 3 seasons of Picard, and they've never explained what's going on with the Romulans. Like they're just do they have a planet? Is there a new Romulus? Like they had a chance to do some world building, but the thing is, world building is like not a thing now with entertainment. You want to milk franchises, but you don't want to put in the work to do some world building or do some really creative shit. Some really creative character development. Like it's all just I don't know. Like that's one of even Picard season 3, which a lot of people like because people liked it because the TNG cast came back together. People liked the nostalgia. People liked the fan service. People like the fact that they gave Picard a son. Because if you remember Generations, Renee and his father, and Picard's brother Robert, passed away off screen due to a fire that we do not see. and Patrick Stewart does a great performance. He cries, he mourns them, and it kind of in Generations really does the episode Family, which is to me Best of Both Worlds Part 3, does that episode dirty because it established Picard's family, and it was a great episode.
Renee and Robert died in a fire. I thought Renee died on a space station.
No, Renee and Robert died in a fire. There was a fire at Chateau Picard.
Wow.
But what's funny is there's no, if you watch Picard season 1 or any of the Picard seasons, there's no indication that there was ever a fire. So I don't know if they don't really explain it. Like, was it rebuilt? What's going on here? So
it's not surprising. They might not have even watched Generations to be aware of that event. I mean, heck, me being a lifelong Trekkie for some reason was misinterpreted. I thought he was on the freaking station with the guy from freaking Clockwork Orange. Yeah, I thought
Malcolm McDowell.
Yeah, I thought he was. I thought for some reason I thought Renee was shot by Malcolm McDowell. I don't know. I gotta rewatch that and not use my 10-year-old interpretation, because I must have watched it when I was 10. And
Renee himself was not in the movie. He was in the movie. He was played by a different actor, so it wasn't the same actor that played him in Family, obviously, because it's been several years. But you only see him in the Nexus, and it's Picard. Picard dreams that he has a family,
Papa,
with all those kids and a wife, and he wanted to see Renee, and that was the thing. And the point of them killing Renee in that movie was to make Picard hesitant to leave the Nexus, which is so fucking stupid. I mean, honestly, that was dumb. Why have that? And then of course Terry Metalis has said that he did not like Generations, and that's kind of why he input some of the stuff from. He kind of tried to undo Generations. So that's what I think a lot of people liked. So they gave Picard a son, and they call him Jack Crusher. I don't know why.
He named him after his best friend who died, whose body he brought home to Wesley.
Yeah, that's true. I don't buy that they had a kid right after Star Trek Nemesis, though.
But yeah, that's a little, weird too. And it's I think Picard's a better professional than to be banging his chief medical officer.
Yeah, it was, and then yeah, I don't even want to get into Picard season 3, but that was the case with that. So,
but I do want to add that when you mentioned world building, one last thing, I'm not going to keep talking about Hyperion, I promise, but that is what Hyperion has in spades. And only other reason I want to touch on world building, look at this beautiful Japanese book cover right here.
Yes,
this is the Japanese artwork.
Dude.
And I just love it. He's got so much cool crap going. You got spaceships, you got the flying carpet. It's a magnetic. It's a electromagnetic flying carpet, basically, right? But then even Fall of Hyperion, which is on the far right here, just so much is going on. You got a drop ship taking off here. You got the time.
Are they telling stories around that fire, basically? Kind of like you said, Canterbury.
Like this nuclear fire over here, you mean?
No,
that
in the middle.
Cloud?
No, in the middle. It looks like they're sitting around a campfire.
Honestly, they do spend some time on They do spend some time around campfires, but not everything here is accurately rendered, and not everything is accurately happening here. They didn't have the naked lady at the same time as the campfire, I guess you could say. But
yeah,
you can see this guy's got these welts on his chest that look like crucifixes. That's gonna tie in pretty relevant in the first chapter already. You got something here. This is a representation of a Mobius cube, but it don't look like a cube at all. And basically, the Templar, his name is Het Mastine. He's carrying this cube as something that might help save the day towards the end of the journey, but they don't know why.
So is there an order of knights or something when you say Templar?
Sort of. The Templars are more like environmentalist, and they worship a guy named John Muir, M-U-I-R, and so they call themselves the Brotherhood of the Muir, or the Ways of the Muir, and I can't pronounce that name, but he was a naturalist from the Pacific Northwest, maybe California. He was just a guy from the 60s or 50s or 70s who was into trees. And so one of the things that the Templars do is they will basically always promote environmental initiatives. So they have an ice world that they've been terraforming, that the government has been terraforming, and the Templars have been opposing that terraforming effort because it would kill the indigenous life form known as ice wraiths, for example. And other times, on the other hand, they're perfectly happy to gene tailor every plant on their own planet but it looks natural enough. So, I guess they get away with, saying it's in favor of their sensibilities. And of course, they have the ships. And somebody's like, whenever somebody visits another planet, the Templars will be involved in maybe seeding new trees. They have a couple of like plants that are like called triaspen, or like a mix of 3 different tree types. But bottom line is that it's not like the Knights Templar. No, they're not like the Knight Templar, I can tell you that. They're more like along the lines of, like I said, environmentalists who wear hoods, and they may have some interesting relationships with another group that I can't specify.
Okay, yeah, that sounds fine. Okay.
So I know, but like no, because I don't want to spoil it too much. But yeah, there's like a flying carpet in the book, and it works. It makes sense, and they have a planet called Mare Infinitus, and it's basically an ocean world with floating platforms on it. And so when you go to the river on the boat, for example, you can also end up on this open ocean world at one point, which is technically not a river, but once you get to the exit portal, you're back in the river system again. And essentially, it's a planet that is a moon of a much larger world. And so what I'm getting at is that very early in the book, they hit the ground running with the world building, and they never stop world building throughout the book. And like questions that you might have early on get answered throughout the series. And
you
that
think
is world building done right.
Okay. Do you think that Star Wars borrowed a bunch of stuff from Hyperion? I'm curious.
New Star Wars? I mean, granted, did Hyperion borrow from Star
maybe
Wars?
Maybe even the prequels. Maybe even the prequels. Because when you said Ocean Planet, I was thinking Camino.
I mean, I would say that maybe only loosely, but I'm not going to say they did. But sometimes I do come across something and I do ask that question. But it's a two-way street. Terminator predated Hyperion, and late in the Hyperion series, you have a creature that is like the Terminator, but like it's a woman, and she's freaking like evil, and she has access to large reservoirs of energy, and essentially she could turn into what looks like liquid silver, but it doesn't make her into liquid metal. It just makes her skin look like it's quicksilver because she's phase shifting out of time. And so essentially, to her perspective, from her view, everything looks like it's frozen, but she's essentially able to like run across the bridge and cut the rope on the bridge and have everyone fall down before they even know what just happened. And that character may have been borrowed from Cameron's Terminator, because I mean it is a robot that looks like it's biological on the outside but is anything but, and almost impossible to defeat. In fact, pretty much impossible for a human to defeat, for example.
Interesting. That sounds pretty cool, actually.
It's not always wrong to borrow. I think good idea. It's not a bad idea to, like they say, if you're gonna steal from the best. In fact, that's a quote from the book. One of the characters, the CEO, which that is the president basically of the hegemony of man, CEO Maynard Gladstone, and she's like an English lady from a planet that is kind of damp called Potofa. And on the planet, anyway, from her bottom line is that she's giving a speech before a war. And she's talking about, like, our goal is victory. And she's talking about the sacrifice and all of this shit that people are going to have to go through. And so someone goes, hey, didn't you steal that from Churchill? And he's like, if you're going to steal from the best.
I've heard that. I've heard that before. Yeah, there you go.
But mostly I think that, there may have been inspiration sporadically drawn, but I think it is its own work. On the whole, it's its own work. And maybe once in a while people get inspired to steal an idea, like what was it? Peter F. Hamilton wrote a series called The Commonwealth Saga, and it's basically like they got portals that connect a network of human worlds, but other than that, there's no other similarities. Everything else, he's creating on his own. But the fact that you have a network of these portals by a different name, they tend to behave a lot like Farcaster portals.
Okay, all right.
But I didn't mean to change topic. I just wanted to briefly just show that cool picture of that.
That's what Chillstream. That's what Chillstream is. Talk about whatever you want. So if you got shit to say.
Remember before you asked me what got me into astronomy, and I kind of went down this rabbit hole about me and a camcorder. But basically, I borrowed a telescope from a friend, and then I saw Jupiter in greater detail, and now I can see the clouds and the planets. Like, this is freaking cool. But then for years, I knew I couldn't afford a telescope. But then at some point, like 5 years ago when I was working at Best Buy, I said, you know what, now it's time to get a telescope. And I'm selling a printer to this couple. And the guy goes, I got a big mother effing telescope in my garage I'll sell you for $200. So I'm like, hell yeah, I buy it. Turns out it would be like $600 to $800 to get the same telescope. So I got off with a good deal. It was a good planetary telescope, but the zoom was a bit too much. And so I bought a wide field telescope, because when you have too much zoom or too narrow of a field of view, it's a bit less forgiving, right? You know, mechanical imperfections. You got a mount that has to counteract the Earth's rotation. You have different things going on. But also, like, you know, things like nebulas, you know, giant gas clouds, with long exposure photography, a wider field of view, a wide, you know, zoom is going to, you know, be easier to maintain consistency on. But I was working on aligning the mirror on that planetary telescope, and I cracked the mirror. I chipped the mirror. I'm literally tightening up a knob and going clink. So I now have to buy another planetary telescope if I ever want to do planets. Because here's the weird thing. You need more zoom or a narrower field of view to look at planets than you do for looking at a nebula. A gas cloud is usually going to take up a large patch of sky, but a planet, it's like something like that. And so you actually need more zoom to look at the crap that's near us.
Yeah, I remember I was listening to some of your stream, I think yesterday. What was the one nebula that was discovered that you were talking about? Was it the Elephant Nebula or something?
Oh, I was looking at the Elephant Trunk Nebula. You're right. And you know, like, in fact, that's something I might be doing a late night stream tonight where I edit or process my imaging, because the thing with astrophotography is, you know, when I got into it, when I bought that first telescope, I was going to the Reddit page and saying, hey, this is my plan, you know, got some questions, you know, can I do X, Y, and Z? And I got some downvotes and I got some kind responses from people who, you know, kind of gave me, like, answers instead of just being, like, dicks. And basically, like, I'll give you an example, like, the Hubble Space Telescope. It takes pictures, but what type of camera? Is it a color camera or a black and white camera? It's actually a black and white camera. And this sounds weird, but they use different filters. So, you know, just like in if you ever used an SLR camera, you might use a polarizing filter or a neutral. You ever use an old school camera at all? I know a lot of people don't. You got modern cameras. We've been born in a modern age. But essentially, you know, you screw on a thing. It looks like a lens, but it's a piece of glass that will either tint the color or reduce the amount of light that can get in. Well, in astrophotography, if you're using a black and white camera, in fact, Technicolor works a lot like this. If you take a picture on a black and white camera and you have a red filter in front of it, it's only going to let the red light in. So even though you end up with a black and white picture, you can easily tell the computer to replace the color white with red. So instead of it being black and white, you have a black and red picture. And if you do this with a green and a blue filter, now you have 3 pictures of the same target. You could do this with a human being. Like, if I sit really still and you take 3 separate pictures in black and white with a red, green, and blue filter, you're going to have the 3 separate colors in Photoshop. And once you combine them, the colors are going to mix to create real colors. And so that's one of the ways that, like, a telescope like Hubble will do it. And that's partly because the intricacies of how a camera works. So a normal digital camera has what we call a Bayer matrix. And it's very bizarre because if you look at it under a microscope, every camera has black and white pixels like we're seeing, right? Except that what's really happening is each black and white pixel can measure, let's say, brightness from 0 to 255. So essentially, 0 would be black, 255 would be white, and somewhere in between would be a shade of gray. But and that's every image sensor, even a color image sensor. So the way that a color image sensor does what it does is by putting little tiny filters on top of each pixel. And you're seeing, like, you know, like a couple examples of that here. So what we're seeing here, for example, is like a microscopic photograph. Over here, you're seeing a side view of the same thing. So you have your photo sites or photodiode where, like, essentially light hits this part of the sensor and it converts the amount of photons gets converted into electrons. So if more photons hit this area, the more electrons, meaning you get more brightness. And so by
are these filters, this blue, green, and red, are those filters right there?
And every color camera has, this is exactly what just about every color camera has. And only weird thing is that you got red, green, and blue, but for every pixel, so just looking at this group of 4 right here, that is basically effectively 1 pixel. So essentially, you'll have, like, if you're taking a picture of a lawn, you're going to have more green, and then maybe you're wearing your blue shirt, so there's going to be some more blue in some parts of that frame, and essentially it then, you know, combines the, you know, total value of colors from all 4 of these to create the color that you get in the final photograph. That's all happening in the camera, you know, in processing. But in astrophotography,
and that's what current cameras have right now.
Yeah, that's like what literally modern cameras do. Like every modern digital camera has been doing for like a long, long time. And so the problem with this is that our human eyes have more cones that are sensitive to green, and so having 2 instead of just one red and one blue, having two green squares kind of makes sense because it allows the camera to, replicate what our eyes are doing. But in space, we don't have a lot of green.
So what do the squares represent?
These represent any four squares represents a single pixel, and each one of these are like not really sub-pixels. I would call them photo sites, but they combine together to make a single pixel. And that's because
four of these squares makes up a single pixel. Interesting.
Because on a color camera, because like essentially it has to now mix the intensities to create whatever color. So if you had like let's say no blue, or let's say you had like a lot of green and red, you might get like yellow. So that'll register as the color yellow. And essentially if I'm taking a picture of something that's only green, then the light that bounces back from it, some of the green light is going to hit the red pixel, no doubt about it, right? But it's not going to penetrate the red pixel, and so that's going to be registered as black over here and over here. So essentially the digital electronics or the firmware and the camera will interpret that as all green or a particular shade of green. So bottom line is that now in astrophotography, the problem is that I'm taking a 5-minute exposure of some nebula or some galaxy, and the photons or the chips are going to land where they fall. And some of those photons, unfortunately, like the red photons from the hydrogen light, are going to land on the green pixels. Those are all going to go to waste right there. So it's like I'm literally wasting exposure time and photons because they're going to land on the blue or green photo site where I don't need them. Furthermore, some light pollution is going to get picked up. So what we do instead is instead of having these color filters, we now have a complete grid of nothing but black and white pixels. So now every square over here will now be able to capture the photons we want, and essentially it's more efficient. It's a little bit more of a pain in the butt, but it's more efficient. It also allows me to filter out light pollution because now I can tune into a specific shade of red, and essentially I can tone it down if I'm getting too much light pollution from sodium light. Because, the orange lights. You ever see the street lights that look kind of orange?
Oh, yeah.
High pressure sodium lights. Yeah. And so a lot of astrophotography filters will inherently filter out that specific wavelength of light, whereas a color image sensor won't do that. You'll have to add your own filter to it. So the EM spectrum is a lot like a radio dial, and you're essentially like using filters to tune in. The Hubble Space Telescope takes it a bit further. So for example, we do like there's a website or a company, Beta Planetarium, and it's I think it's German or British. They make filters, and when you shop for their different type of filters, they have like ultra narrow band and color filters. Now, the ones I described were just red, green, and blue filters, and those are effectively what we call broadband filters because they are capturing the broadband light that we can see with our human eyes. And you can see right here as an example. So what this filter is doing essentially is when I take a picture, this bar at the bottom is like a prism. So imagine you're holding a prism up to sunlight and you're getting that rainbow color.
Yeah.
And then what we're doing is we're saying tune into everything from 600 nanometers to 700 nanometers. And that's basically going to be all red. And any other light is going to effectively be blocked out. Even better, there's like a gap between red and green, so essentially it's sort of ignoring undesirable light. I think high pressure sodium is somewhere in this area. And you can see down here we got HA in the middle of the red. Now what is HA? That would be a narrowband filter, and narrowband is essentially like tuning into a very narrow frequency. So here's a good one right here. So I clicked on the wrong one. Let's hope that loads in a timely manner, because there's an important little graph on the thing, like similar to this graph, but bottom line is that hydrogen alpha is a very narrow sliver. See, like it's very hard to see here, but right above the word HA, there's a very thin dark line.
Yeah, I see it.
That's about 4 to 8 nanometers wide. And so essentially when I use a hydrogen alpha filter, I'm blocking out all of the different light spectrums, including the majority of the red, and all I'm getting is this very thin sliver of red. And basically light that comes from hydrogen alpha wavelengths is a ruby red color, and what that means is essentially ionized hydrogen. So hydrogen alpha is like ionized hydrogen. Ionized hydrogen is electrically charged hydrogen, so it emits a very specific type of wavelength of light that you can actually isolate for. So here's an example of narrowband in action. So that's the ruby red, that little tiny peak. Notice that it's not broad. Like before we were looking at a broad red thing. Now we're only looking at this very narrow sliver right here. And so that's what the Hubble does. Sometimes you'll see a picture from the Hubble and they'll say, this picture is captured in false color. And essentially what they did was they may have used hydrogen alpha, ionized sulfur, and ionized oxygen filters. But because scientists maybe want to have a color that pops out more for analysis, they'll substitute the blue with yellow. Or they substitute any, and that's what they do sometimes, because what they're looking for is they're trying to determine like how much hydrogen or how much of a given element is inside this gas cloud. And the way we do that is, let's look up Hubble filter wheel, because I'm sure they have this device. And my telescope uses the same hardware. Oh yeah, so that's the one from the James Webb. And let's see if we can get a closer picture of this, because it's a great mechanism right there. So this looks way more complex than it needs to be, but essentially it's like one of these. If you see these pictures up here where you see like this guy holding a device in his hand, or this one here. So I own something very similar to one of these. And essentially I populate it with filters. It's motorized, so I can issue a command from my computer to tell it to, rotate it. So on a normal camera, you put your filters in the front, but on a telescope, we put the filters on the back. We essentially put the filters right in front of the image sensor. And we do that because, one, it would be too damn expensive to have a piece of glass that's coated in a very particular manner that's this large. It literally costs $10,000. It's bad enough that I had to pay $300 for each filter for the hydrogen, sulfur, and oxygen. They literally cost me $350. The oxygen filter was back ordered for like literally a year because the company came up with a new process and they didn't want to sell the old
So the
model.
oxygen is the red one.
Oxygen is the blue one, or bluish green. It's sort of, yeah.
And what's the other ones?
The red one is hydrogen alpha, and I believe S2, which is ionized sulfur, if I remember correctly, is sort of like a yellowish color.
So what makes hydrogen alpha? What exactly is hydrogen alpha?
So it's two things, but essentially the sun. In fact, there's a different type of filter you get, which is super cool. It's called a Daystar Quark. And I own one of these, and this is a bit different, but it's the same concept. And essentially, this eyepiece here will filter out hydrogen alpha when you're pointing it at the sun. But of course, this filter is doing a lot more. Bottom line is that the sun is as much electrical as it is fusion. I mean, it's an electromagnetic phenomenon insofar as you have a lot of, gas. You got a lot of heat. You got plasma. What is plasma? Plasma is electrically charged gas. And you got, helium and hydrogen undergoing fusion. Bottom line is that when you have electrically charged hydrogen, it emits that very specific ruby red shade of, light. And that's ionized hydrogen. That's hydrogen alpha light. It's that ruby red color that comes from a star, for example. But now imagine you have a nebula, which is a gas cloud in space.
So I got a question. Electrically charged hydrogen. So everybody knows hydrogen is basically one proton and a single electron in its neutral state. So is there another? How many other electrons are there in this electrically charged hydrogen?
That's a good question. I don't know, but I can show you what a picture of the sun looks like in hydrogen alpha. But it does. I'd be making up stuff if I tried to answer that. I can pretty much describe what wavelength it is on the EM spectrum. Like this diagram does over here. This is another example, like where it's showing white light, and then you're seeing hydrogen alpha, which is like literally, and this guy, apparently, so an angstrom is even smaller than a nanometer. It's like a smaller unit.
Yeah, I remember learning. I forget exactly what the unit for angstrom is. Isn't it like 10 to the...
Yeah, it's some obscenely narrow, part of a nanometer or something. And so when you use a hydrogen alpha filter like the Quark, there's a knob on there that'll tune it up by like 10 or up or down by 10 angstroms. And that's because
10 to the negative 8.
Wow. So it is a obscenely small unit. And so why we would adjust it is because sometimes if you adjust it towards one end of the bandpass, you can see surface detail on the sun. You can see the the chromosphere, you can see the spicule, as they're called. And if you tune it towards the other end, you see the prominences, which are basically like solar panels. And so getting back to what hydrogen alpha is in that regard is imagine, like, how do I image hydrogen alpha? Why do I use a hydrogen alpha filter? Well, somebody's got a gas cloud like a nebula, and you got multiple stars peppered in that nebula, and so the light from those stars are essentially illuminating that nebula, and using a hydrogen alpha filter will allow me to filter out all of the undesirable light. It'll allow me to punch through stellar dust, and essentially I'll be able to see that nebulosity, that cloud detail.
Oh.
But I don't know how many protons or neutrons or anything are inside of a hydrogen alpha, if there is a difference in that regard. I almost think about it more like along the lines of a neon light.
Yeah. I mean, so yeah, I'm basically seeing that it's basically spectral line hydrogen atom. Of course, I'm on Wikipedia looking this up. So it's got a wavelength of 656.2 nanometers in air and 0.46 nanometers in vacuum. Okay, let me see. Balmer series. There's quantum numbers. The Bohr model. Jesus.
Mr. Bohr, yeah.
Yeah.
His name is Neil Bohr.
Yeah, I think it's Neil. It's Niels Bohr, and I think they were using. I think he was. I heard he was prominent in the movie Oppenheimer. So I think they were like continuing his work or something on the nature of the atom and all that stuff. So I'm. So yeah, it's just it's a filter. It's basically it's a filter like you said. So
and Mr. Tickle Trunk pointed out. All of this stuff is why we know what is in a planet's atmosphere from far away, and essentially each element has its own fingerprint. So by using a particular filter that from Earth can isolate that element, you can also use that on exoplanets. Now, what throws in the challenges when we're dealing with red shift and blue shift, but if you're able to determine the red shift and blue shift, then yeah, we can accurately determine what the composition of an atmosphere is. But here's the caveat. Last I checked, you have to be able to get a cross section of the atmosphere. So the planet has to be passing in front of its star in such a way that, let's say this is the planet and this is the atmosphere. That thin area atmosphere has to have its starlight shining through it. So we look at the star, we can analyze that planet's parent star and figure out what elements are in it. And then once we know that, we know what is being subtracted or what is being absorbed by that planetary atmosphere.
Is that how we discover plants from very, very far away?
Well, essentially, that's how we analyze plants that we have discovered. But to discover plants, they have a couple of weird ways of doing it. One of them is initially only good for large planets like gas giants.
Yeah.
And so, essentially, if you have a large enough planet, it's going to cause the star to wobble as that thing is traversing. So if you take a picture of that parent star for a year or a few years, you'll see a consistent wobble. And then based on that wobble, if you can figure out what the mass of that star is, and then you see it wobble, you can figure out how big does an object need to be in order to make that sized object wobble. So that's one method of discovering exoplanets. Other methods involve, I think, using newer telescopes that block out the star. So essentially, they're looking at the star, but then they're putting almost like a mask over it so that it doesn't blow out the entire image. And then if there's anything orbiting it, they can see the speckle of light coming off of that. But those are the two methods that I'm aware of that they use for hunting for exoplanets. And of course, now you got the James Webb Space Telescope with both a larger mirror than before, and of course, that one's tuned more for the infrared spectrum, and they did that because you could punch through more layers of stellar dust using infrared wavelengths.
Yeah. So it's yes, I agree. I'm curious, how do they know all this stuff? So so I got a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think we can discover, or do you think it's possible to discover? Because you said they've been mainly discovering gas giants as exoplanets. Is it possible to discover Earth-like planets or
I think
or smaller solid bodies?
It's hard, but there's been some strides. I mean, I just know that the first exoplanets were larger ones. And also, as long as you ever hear the term in the news, super Earth? It's like a planet Earth-like planet that's triple the size of the Earth. So certainly not something that would be inhabitable by people of our physical stature. I mean, I'm pretty sure because
of the gravity. And I mean, the larger the planet, the larger the gravity.
And then also that imposes some other interesting challenges like if a species could exist on a planet like that, could they ever become a spacefaring species, or would the escape velocity be so insurmountable, which is essentially, going faster than orbit in order to get out of orbit of your planet, but it's just entering. But bottom line is, yeah, so super Earths were among the list, and I think lately we've been getting better. I'm not fully up to date. I'd have to do my homework on this, but we're getting better at getting readouts on smaller planets that are close to the Earth size now, and we may be seeing some stuff soon. But even then, is life obligated to follow the rules that our life forms? Okay, we know that it's nice to have liquid water. if you're going to have life that is anything like the microbial life that we are familiar with. But who's to say that, in my opinion, at least some of the life form wouldn't, prefer breathing in gaseous silicon or methane or something like that. In fact, some people speculate, Titan, the moon of Saturn, I doubt it would have life on it, but who knows? Maybe it has some weird microbe living in the methane lakes, More likely the Jovian moons, but that's a different topic.
You got of course, you've seen 2010, right? The day we made contact, Europa.
Yep. And Europa was the one with the ice shell and the ocean, the speculated ocean underneath the surface.
Yeah.
There's even a Gundam seed they found in Gundam seed. There was wasn't there a whale on that planet?
I don't remember.
I think there was a space whale. Yeah, early in Gundam seed, John Glenn or George Glenn, not John Glenn, George Glenn, the first coordinator. Genetically engineered human, goes alone on a ship that looks like the Jupiter Energy Fleet from the Universal Century. So that's
from like Victory Gundam, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, Victory Gundam. I don't know if you actually see the Jupiter ship in Victory Gundam. I know it's in the manga. I haven't read the Victory Gundam mangas, but I hear Judo Astor shows up in there, so I'm kind of looking forward to reading that. And I am the
Double Zeta.
Yes, sir. Yep, exactly. And I am a big mother effing fan. I love my Victory Gundam. I just rewatched it again. I'm really upset that I finished it because maybe I'll rewatch it just so I can make some clips out of it. But I've been working on my Victory Gundam V2 Victory Gundam model, and I am just I don't know. It's my favorite Gundam. Or both Victory 1 and V2 are my favorite. I just like that it can transform. That it's versatile. They spend the first 10 episodes on the back of a truck. But as I was saying, I was just saying how much I love the Victory Gundam, how they spent the first 10 episodes on the back of a truck. And I might buy those. So I have a good bootleg in 480 in 1080p, but I wouldn't mind buying those anyway because I have one corrupted episode. So I think I had to watch the synopsis and read about it. But the only thing that's better about my copy of Victory Gundam is that the subtitles were done by a fan subbing group, and there's a format of subtitles that has so many cool features to it that it's just amazing. Whole other topic. I'll do a video about it someday.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Victory Gundam. I don't know. I know people have their issues with Victory Gundam, how everyone dies.
I think this is a great show. Victory Gundam's a great show. I mean, the only issue I have with Victory Gundam is that there's way more. There's too many, in my opinion, too many recap episodes.
Yeah.
Zeta Gundam did not have all 50 episodes of Zeta Gundam, there was no recap episodes. So, I mean, Zeta's still my favorite, but this is up there. I mean, I really, the last time I watched Victory was a few years ago. I really enjoyed it. It's brutal. This series is brutal.
I love
and
it.
the main character he's only a 13-year-old boy, and that's his I think that's his adopted sister, and she's only like 12, I think. And they're witnessing war, they're witnessing. I mean, that's the thing about Gundam is it's basically witnessing the realities of war from the point of view of an adolescent.
It was so weird. I remember early in Victory Gundam, Shakti, which is the girl he was living with, that adopted sister or whatever. And
yeah, right here.
Yeah, and she's fucking sitting there, goes around planting seeds, and she's getting traumatized during a battle. So there's a scene, I'm gonna make an animation of it, where she's digging with a stick. Or using a stick, then she's putting the seeds down. Then she's digging again, putting the seeds down. She's doing it in a psychotic loop. And her friends are get on the truck. We got to get the hell out of here. And she's no F's given. She got a baby on her back crying. And generally, Shakti kept it together. I mean, granted, sometimes she'd get lost. Sometimes she had this idealistic belief that she can go and negotiate with the bad guys. Oh, it's just my uncle. I'll tell my uncle to stop the war. It's no, the Hadwins are not going to listen to you, young lady. And she kind of caused, she might have caused Uso's mom to die because of that.
Yeah.
But,
I mean, Shakti was basically they were, her and Uso's the boy. They're separated pretty much majority of the time. So it's she's kind of the damsel.
Yeah.
And then we find out that I think her mother is at the head of Zanskir or something. It's weird.
Queen.
So Zanskir is the empire that kind of replaces the Crossbone Vanguard from F91, because F91 kind of failed. F91 came out as a movie, and they made it as a movie because of the insane returns that Char's counterattack got. But I mean, the thing is, Char's counterattack was an event. This was this was 1988. This was 9 years in the making. Like people were finally get to see the final fight between Amuro Ray and Char Aznavour.
Yo,
And
for real.
yeah, and then the way that ended was insane. Like you're thinking like can Char redeem himself? No, and I'm not going to say how. And what's even weirder is how the ending or their fates are kind of up in the air. It's kind of ambiguous, like what exactly happened to them and all that. When there was the psycho frame,
this big event happens, and
overloads.
And it gets like it somehow might deflect the asteroid or something. But like I thought it was a beautiful ending when like a bunch of Federation pilots show up and they say, "We're gonna help you push this asteroid out of the way," and Armor was like, "What the hell are you doing here? You're gonna die. Your mobile suits can't re-enter an atmosphere." And yet, like, there was some like respect and love and camaraderie bullshit going on. Maybe the Psycho Frame was amplifying good emotions, and suddenly everyone decided to get a conscience and help out. But I felt bad for. And then Neo Xeon pilots were coming in and helping to push the asteroid. They were trying to use their combined, thrust to push the asteroid away, and it was just crazy. The good guys and the bad guys effectively were coming together to stop this from happening. Although it was a little confusing. Like sometimes the new type BS pisses me off. Like it just like goes over my head. But other times, like I don't mind a little bit of ESP. Like in Victory Gundam, they did very good where like Uso's piloting the Gundam, and like you get that lightning bolt, and someone's above you. But then there's one scene he kills somebody.
Yeah, new type.
Yeah, and the thing about new types is some people say that they have like empathy in spades, and so at one point Uso kills an opponent, and he hears this death scream. He's like,
yeah,
and it freaks him the fuck out.
It's like they have like it's almost like I mean it's the new type thing is just is very interesting because they don't really understand it. But it's basically the next evolution. I mean, according to Gundam, it's the next evolution of mankind living in outer space, I believe. Isn't that right? Mm-hmm. And because of that, there's heightened senses. Like they can, like Amuro Ray in Gundam can like dodge bullets. Char Aznavour can dodge like shots. He can be like 2 steps ahead of another. He could be 2 steps ahead of another pilot, and then just blows him up and everything. And because of that, and this is one of the subplots of especially Zeta, they try to make cyber new types. So like there's all like the Earth Federation government and the Titans have been trying to weaponize this ability, and they've been trying to create this artificially.
Yo, that was some shit. Yeah. It's mentally unstable.
Up. Yeah, you had freaking Rosemi 4. You had 4, and you had Rosemi in Zeta, and then Double Zeta. You had Puru, the little girl Puru, and there was a whole bunch. There was like 2 of her. There was a good one, and there was a bad one, and then there was another one in if you've seen Gun of the Unicorn. She was older, obviously. She was that one grew up.
Audrey Byrne?
No, Audrey Byrne. Audrey Byrne is Mineva Zabi.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you're right. Mm-hmm.
I forgot Puru's adult name in Unicorn, but yeah.
Oh, yeah. You know what? I for many years I didn't watch Double Zeta because I heard people hated it, and honestly I enjoyed it. Like I enjoyed the levity.
It was. I mean, Zeta was a dark tragedy. I mean, even the end of Zeta was extremely dark. Like the main character survives, but he doesn't come out of that show the same. And because of that, well, they had to basically, I mean, him and the rest of the pilots are kind of gone after Zeta. So they need pilots. So only people that survive are like, Bright and the Agama and the crew. But they have no pilots. They have no mobile suit pilots to pilot to pilot the craft. The only one that survived was Fa, Camille's girlfriend. So and what's funny is Double Zeta actually aired right after Zeta ended. So the first episode of Double Zeta is kind of like a recap of Zeta with some additional footage and all that. And they kind of changed things. So at the end of Zeta, spoiler alert, Camille, so he rams his core fighter. He rams his core fighter into Shiroko. Shiroko is the main villain of the Titans. Mm-hmm. Rams it into the O, the man from Jupiter. There you go. Rams it into the O and kills him. and he's like, haha, I'm you got me, but I'm taking your soul with me. And so after he says that, well, Camille just starts acting a little fruity in his cockpit, and
Yeah.
and so
Catatonic.
and there was he did the catatonic thing was in Double Zeta,
Oh,
but
it's a little later.
at the end of
Okay.
Zeta, he's just like, what is going on here? What is that? Ha ha! Look at that little thing. Ha ha! Like a moron. And then Fa cries, and then of course the final shot of Zeta before you see the fiend symbol is Char's cockpit is open, and he's not there, so his cockpit survived. So at the end of Zeta, he's fighting Haman Khan, the purple haired girl who is head of Neo Zeon and Axis, and he's fighting her. He has the Hyaku Shiki. He's fighting her in her Cubile, and she is just completely kicking his ass. Like he's retreating, and he gets cornered by her on like some ship that's about to blow up, and he gets like she just takes him down all the way to the cockpit. Like the cockpit's all that's left of the suit. And he just uses what do they call it, the Vulcan cans that are like on the forehead
the
or something.
the head cannon.
He
Yeah,
shoots
the Vulcans.
he shoots the Vulcan. He has one last ditch effort. She's about to impale him with the beam saber, and he uses his Vulcan cans to shoot like the self-destruct mechanism, and it blows up the ship. She gets out in time, and she's like, "Oh, screw you, Char! I wanted to kill you," and all that. And then so we think he's dead, but the thing is, we see a big thing of slab cover his cockpit. And then the whole ship blows up. We're like, what the hell? And we're like, what the hell? And then you see the cockpit go down like this on the screen. They're like, okay, he's alive. So when are we going to see him next? Well, we don't see him in Double Zeta. We don't actually see him after that until Char's counterattack.
Well, hold on. You talking about which guy you talking about again? Just to be sure. You're not talking about Camille, right?
Well, I was talking about Char.
Okay, Char. Yeah,
Quattro.
That was
Quattro
very weird.
Bagina.
That's
a Zeta Gundam name.
Because
with the sunglasses and all that.
And it rhymes with anyway. But yeah, the name that rhymes.
Yeah,
and,
I was basically recapping the end of Zeta Gundam episode.
Okay,
15.
so I did understand that correctly because I was like, I just want to make sure I wasn't mixing him up with friggin' Camille, who of course. I don't want to ruin what happens to him at the end of Double Zeta, but we get some satisfaction with that. We do get a little satisfaction to find out there. But Char, like, he skips that whole entire conflict, and then he shows up in Char's counterattack, and I don't know what he was doing. And I guess they couldn't have him in Double Zeta because then he might decide not to do what he did in Char's counterattack. I don't know. He had to go on vacation to find himself, to remember he was a bad guy.
So yeah, you're not wrong there. But Tomino was originally going to write Char into the second half of Double Zeta, but because of the fact that while Double Zeta was in production, he got the green light to make a Gundam movie, and he wanted that movie to feature Char Aznavour. So he dropped the Char storyline from Double Zeta, and instead of Char being the one to lead a revolt against Haman, they had this character named Gremi Toto. He's a younger blonde Zeon officer.
Yes, I remember him.
And he was basically the other faction at the end of Double Zeta and all that. And I think it was his faction that blows up Dublin in the episode. And they kill one of the original characters from the Mosu Gundam. They kill Hayato.
I remember.
And I was like, holy shit. Yeah, that was like, this is like shit. This is getting dark again, because the beginning of the show, beginning of Double Zeta. So you go from Dark Zeta to the beginning of Double Zeta, where they fight. So one of the pilots survives from Zeta, Yazan, who was killing everybody off in Zeta. He survives, and they're fighting him by throwing oranges. Like there's a point where they're at a marketplace on one of the colonies, one of the O'Neill colonies, O'Neill cylinders. They find Yazan. They're like, you, and then they just start chucking oranges at him. Like what the hell is this? This is episode 2. And it starts off so ridiculous, and then but as the series goes, it gets more and more dark. And then I have to admit, the finale of Double Zeta wasn't as good as the finale of Zeta. The finale of Zeta, the 3-way fight between the 3 factions, was awesome. But hey, the end of Double Zeta. See, the thing about Double Zeta is the thing that was unresolved was Haman. the purple-haired girl, and
Yeah.
the head of Axis. So they took care of the Titans. That was one faction. They were the main antagonists of Zeta. The main antagonists of Double Zeta were the Neo Zeon of Axis, of the asteroid Axis. So this big massive asteroid is also a colony, and let's just say that colony, that Axis, is what Char tries to drop onto Earth in Char's counterattack. So when you're watching the Expanse and you're seeing, all these asteroids being chucked at Earth and all that, causing nuclear winters. I mean, I'm not going to say it came from Gundam, but I'm sure James S.A. Corey probably was very familiar with Gundam.
I mean, I've seen a couple of times, and I could buy that, I mean, I'm glad they didn't do, they don't have space colonies in the Expanse, and I have a friend who thinks that the Belters should not be the downtrodden ones, that the Belters should be the wealthiest ones in the Expanse, because they have, the ability to harvest minerals. They don't have to launch anything out of a gravity well. So even though we like to assume that Earth would be like, the most resource rich, the guys with the asteroid belt, they have easy access to minerals. And a friend even argues that they should have the best universities in the star system. Now, Mars, on the other hand, I mean, it should be a backwater by comparison to the belt. But no big deal. It's just one minor thing where they got it wrong. But I do want to add that watching Double Zeta recently makes it much easier. Like, I can appreciate... There's things that I saw in Double Zeta that, make me appreciate Char's counterattack. I loved Char's counterattack when I saw it many years ago for the first time. But I couldn't appreciate what happens to Astronage. Astronage, yeah. Like him. Like, he gets the raw deal. I mean, he survives both series, right?
Yeah, Zeta and Double Zeta.
Only for that to happen in Char's counterattack and his
because he was, I believe he was on the runway, and then the runway got hit by a weapon or something, and blew up, and he was on it, and you see his body drift into space. It was,
I think he was in the middle.
It was very quick. You're like who died? You're like, for me, I was like, who died for a second? And I realized it was Astanagi.
Yeah. And his wife, I think right before that, he's looking at his fiance. He's like, "Oh my God, you died!" And then I think he's like, so it's like that. And then he gets it's like, "Geez, man, poor guy survives all of this only for this somewhat unceremonious end on the the runway on the launch catapult of the ship."
Did you know originally it was so there's a different version of Char's counterattack that was written by Tomino. It's called Belter Chica's Children. If you don't remember, Belter Chica is the blonde chick that keeps coming on to Amuro in Zeta Gundam.
Yeah.
So originally she was supposed to be the love interest of Amuro, and apparently she was pregnant with his child, and that idea got rejected by the sponsor, I believe, by the sponsor. So they got. So I think it was High Streamer, I think, or was the other one, which is the one that they used. And of course they added the character Chan. So Chan was the love interest. And of course, what happens to Chan, right? Chan kills, what's her name? Quest, the girl girl, the daughter of the one of the chairmen, one of the Earth Federation chairmen.
Yeah.
And then she just defects and runs away with Char, and she's like, and what's funny is Bright Noah's son Hathaway had the hots for her. Now he's only 13, but he had the hots for her, and she just didn't give a shit. She wanted Char. She wanted 33-year-old Char, and Char's pretending to be interested, but he doesn't give a shit about her.
Yeah,
he only cares about one person, and that person is dead. And the reason why he does all this was to get back at Amuro for killing her in the first Mobile Suit Gundam. And I didn't realize this. My friend Steven had to explain this to me, because at the very end, the last thing that Char says is Lala could, when they're pushing the asteroid. So Char succeeded in placing the asteroid into the atmosphere and Earth, and the new Gundam Amuro. So Amuro defeated Char in battle. He's holding his cockpit, and he's actually applying force with the cockpit onto. They're trying to push Axis off of the back into space. They're trying to redirect it back into space so it doesn't fall onto Earth and cause a nuclear winter. And they're talking while all the mobile suits are trying to push it up, and Char is like, if it wasn't for you, or if it wasn't for you, Alala could have been a mother to me. And then Amuro's like, what? And then that's when the psycho frame overloads, and then you see all the pretty colors, and then Char and Amuro are gone, and we don't know what happened to them. They vanish, and that's how Char's counterattack ends.
And that somehow also served to deflect or destroy the asteroid, right? Like, it didn't hit the Earth after that.
No, it redirected Axis back into space.
Yeah, and like I couldn't appreciate that until I watched. So I watched Gundam in backwards order. I saw Char's counterattack, and I think I saw 0083 first, but then I never watched Zeta for years, and I watched Char's counterattack. And then going back, like to Zeta and Double Zeta, made it easier for me to appreciate, what happens in Char's counterattack, to understand it better, to give it more payoff or whatever. And same applies to freaking Unicorn. I didn't even watch Double Zeta. While watching Unicorn, I'm just hearing about the ship Nahale Aragama, and I'm just like, I don't know why this name has to be funny, and I don't understand it. But then, like, I'm watching Double Zeta, I'm like, oh, okay. It's like things kind of come together more now. And so I have not watched Char's counterattack yet, but when I do, it'll be with the benefit of having just finished Double Zeta. Although, to be fair, I don't think I ever finished the original Zeta. I think I watched half of it, then I forgot about it, and then I watched the new translation, which apparently diverges. Do you know much about that one?
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, what's funny is there's a picture of me on Facebook. Tomino. So new translation came out in 2006. All three of the films came out throughout 2005 to 2006 in Japan, and then Tomino. They were showing them here in Chicago. And Tomino himself came to downtown Chicago, and so remember this store called Borders Books. Well, yeah. He was doing a signing of, and I have it right here. He was doing a signing of he was doing a signing of his Mobile Suit Gundam novelization, which I have right here. All right, this is it. This is, and I bought this then. So this book nice. This book is 17, could be 18 years old, and look who signed it, Yoshiyuki Tomino, and it says 2006, October 16th, and he drew a Haro right here.
He drew a freaking Haro. That's so cool.
Did. Yeah. So,
oh my god.
And this book is very different. So like the Amuro dies in this. Char lives and Amuro dies in this. This is very, and Char becomes part of the white base, or the what the fuck do they call them? The white base. The
freaking Londo Bell.
No, Londo Bell is Char. The Londo Bell is Char's counterattack. They also call it the Trojan Horse, I believe.
Hold on. So this is a Mobile Suit Gundam novelization,
of the original Gundam, yeah. So
this is not even going that far into the timeline. Holy cow! Yeah. It's a bit early.
Yeah. So this is like I'm gonna have to read up on this, but I'm not sure if this was an idea that Tomino submitted and got rejected. And obviously this is made up of 3 different books right here. So.
Oh wow! I might buy that. That's great. I'm glad I'm glad you brought this to my attention.
Yeah, I don't know how available this is. Like, I bought this. I bought this like you said. I bought this back in 2006. So this has been a long time. So they do have it.
This is weird because it's not really. It looks like it says paperback illustrated. So I don't know if that means it's got pictures in there, but the cover looks about right. And I mean, the name Awakening Escalation Confrontation. Is that the same name as what you got?
Yep. Awakening Escalation Confrontation. Yep.
Okay. So maybe this is something. Okay. So cool. Good. I'll make.
And this one says translated by Frederick L. Schote. And then this one says introduction by Mark Simmons. Mark Simmons is considered the premier, at least at this point in the early aughts. Mark Simmons was the biggest Gundam fan in this part of the world. Like he knew everything about it. So
that is a hell of a nerd credential to have. The biggest Gundam fan in the Western lands or whatever. But now even having that autograph is high nerd creds, of course. And I have a ceramic Haro, and it's funny. I was thinking about like Haros, like if they could be built, and like what's cool is like they evolve. Like you got the early Haro where it's got like robotic legs that spring out the bottom, and it's got the flaps on top that I don't think are arms, but they got flaps. But then I'm thinking like in Victory Gundam, the Haro does a lot more. Like it's more technologically advanced by that point, which makes sense. But
Yeah.
it's got this like bouncy thing going on. So if I would imagine a real life Haro, I would say it would have to have like almost like a rubbery exterior and the
Yeah.
ability to like deform itself. But it would also use something like a gyroscope so that it could roll, because that's one of the things the Haro could roll or
Yeah.
could bounce around. Now in Zero G, you could give it some thrusters or whatever. But I don't know. It's like unfortunately, there hasn't been a real effort to take a crack at it. Like you could look up, there was a attempt at making something like a Haro, but it's not really remotely good at all. It's like
Yeah.
at best, it's got legs that come out and they charge you $800 for the licensing.
Really.
But in Victory Gun, they did a lot of schlocky stuff with the Haro. So I remember like they would like the Haro would create a soap bubble or a holographic projection on a soap bubble of like a mech attacking, and the bad guys are like, "Oh no, a Gundam! Oh no, a Gundam!"
I forget exactly when, but I remember seeing something like that. So yeah, you're right. You're right. They did do that. That's
like I don't care.
I'm overdue. Like I'll be honest. Like I've bought these Blu-rays. I haven't watched them yet. I mean, I've seen Victory Gundam, but I haven't watched these particular Blu-rays yet. So
man.
The only one that I've watched was 0080, and I think 0080 is still my favorite of the. I mean, it's not my. I mean, it's Zeta's my favorite of the 50. The long shows and all that. Out of the OVAs, I think 0080 is my favorite. It's just so dark. I mean, it's so insane. Like you watch that series, and it's like Legend of the Galactic Heroes. You will not leave with a dry eye, especially that final episode, dude. Like I was like, I wasn't expecting. Like I've seen Kill 'Em All Tomino. I've seen characters die. I felt bad for characters. I remember that girl that she goes onto the deck. She's Kai Kai is piloting this craft, and the girl with her two
Irish
younger siblings, with the red hair. She's like, I'm gonna help you. She goes into the back, and then she flies. She flies off the ship. I was like,
dude. Like, I don't know, like, she manually launches the missile, and then the exhaust plume pushes her out the side of the gun parry. Yeah. And she got these two little kids. Like I remember her leaving the little kids, giving them the gold coins, saying, "Don't let anyone see where you hide this money, and use it to buy food." And like, Kai is left remembering that those poor kids are now without that mother because she snuck her way on the ship and joined him and whatnot. But like, that was
her. She was a sister. She was their older sister.
Yeah,
so.
It wasn't even his fault. It's just like, but man, what a shit situation. Oh my god.
He was crying. I mean, Kai was kind of the brat of the. Of the original White Base cast and all that. He was a bit of a, him and Amuro would fight it out quite a bit. But to see him cry like that, and because of that, and then I think he sees the girl. I don't know if it's simply in his mind or if he's having like a new type of vision. But she tells him, it's not your fault. Don't worry. They are really. I mean, they've taken care of themselves in the past. They will do so in the future.
Mm-hmm.
But dude, that broke my heart. He was
on a deck plate wailing on the floor. Oh,
that broke my heart. That episode. I mean, the fact that I remember that now to this day, that episode broke my fucking heart.
Yeah, no, that broke me too. It really did. Like that was some shit. Mm-hmm. And I mean, that's what kept me watching. I mean, like it's like that sense of nuance, throughout too. Like you sometimes even feel bad for the bad guys. I mean.
Well, yeah, you had Garma Zabi in particular. Like one part that I remember correctly. I mean, we all know what happens to Garma. Char basically double crosses him. Gives him a wrong location. He's charging in one direction, then the White Base just basically shoots his ass down. And he was engaged. He had a fiance, and she wanted to go and leave and help him. And the family was against. They weren't even happy with the fact that she was engaged to him. And she's like, "I hate you, father." And the father just backhands her because
Yep.
Like, dude. And then in the movies, that was all we saw in the movie trilogy, the compilation movies. That's all we saw of her. In the series, though, the following episode, she tries to get revenge on the White Base, and she dies too.
She dies crazy. Too.
Yeah,
I kind of remember watching, because I remember watching the movies a few times, and at some point I sat down with the 50 episodes, and it just it fills in so many missing parts, so much more happens. And yeah, like I'm trying to remember, she died like she hit her head or some stupid shit. Like she I think she climbed up on the front of the nose of a plane or some crazy shit like that. Then she slipped. I don't think she even got shot. I think it was a slip and fall that killed her, which is even funnier.
Yeah, I mean that was freaking Tomino. I mean, if you remember F-91, a mother was carrying a child. The mother died because one of the shells that came out of this massive gun, massive gun from a Zaku or maybe not.
Yeah,
Zaku,
it was from a Freddy mobile suit. It had like
it was. I mean, it was like a shell like this big. It hits her on the head, kills her. I was like, dude. I shouldn't laugh, but I was like, dude.
It was like a machine gun cannon with large shells. So the empty cartridges coming out were falling like in multiples, like tumbling out, and just one of them has to crack you in the head. So the mother falls. She got the baby. Now, funny thing is,
and then of course the kids who are the main characters of F-91, they took the kid and.
And that literally happens. In Victory Gundam, same thing happened. A mother got hit in the head. I think they were in the church when a mother gets hit in the head with a piece of debris, and she's holding a baby. And that's literally how the character Carl or Carlmon becomes adopted by the kids in Victory Gundam as well. And so, they just kind of had an ID badge around him, and they were able to figure out his name. But yeah, it's pretty wild how you get that, like, in fact, both of those, especially F-91, you bear witness to the chaos of being in the war. It's not always fun in games having mobile suit battles. When you're a civilian on the ground, your house is burning down, the pet store is collapsing, and the guys inside are getting crushed to death, and mommy's getting hit in the head with a gun shell. And poor Arthur. You remember Arthur? He was the black dude on the back of the gun tank. So they had that. It wasn't really a gun tank, but it was like a tank that transforms into a mobile suit, and they're all like, these teenagers are there, they got their like bazookas and RPGs, and one of them gets hit in the head by either a mobile suit or a shell. I forget how, but something hits, he falls off the back of the tank, and he's just like, and they're like, Arthur, wake up, and he's like, bro, he's dead, move on.
Mark, all the episodes of Gundams, I think original Gundam, Zeta Gundam, they're all on YouTube. You can watch all the episodes.
Really?
I think I don't know if it's subbed or dubbed or both. But
now you mention it, because a while ago, one of the Gundam YouTube channels, maybe not Gundam official, but they were doing it. They did have like a drive time where they had like specific movies out in their entirety, and at one point in time I do remember they had entire playlists complete with episodes, and I think it might have been Gundam Info, which I'm not going to play any sound or picture from this because I know they'll slam us, or you in particular, with the copyright, but they may very well have like Gundam Build Divers, Re-Rise. Like, see, I was never into these like non-UC timeline Gundams. I mean, I do want to give some of them a chance.
I mean, have you ever seen Gundam Wing or G Gundam or Gundam X or Turn A Gundam?
I might enjoy. Well, Turn A, I got Turn A on Blu-ray, at least half of it, and I've been watching it on and off, and maybe I'll revisit that soon. It's not that I didn't really hate it. I just, for some reason, kept walking away from it. But
yeah, it's very different. It's not like Victory or Zeta or heck even Double Zeta. It's just it's basically Tomino kind of passed it. So Victory Gundam, Tomino was depressed. That's why like the female unit that's in this show, all of them die. All of them die. In pretty violent ways too. Like, it's crazy.
Dude. And like, yeah, I mean, like at one point one of the characters is holding up a launch ramp. It's like sort of like a magnetic railroad that has a ramp to launch things into space, and it's a big deal. It's like been there for 100 years, and it's a big historical landmark. And so she decides she's going to use her mobile suit to hold it up. And some asshole decides, oh, if you're going to hold that thing up, I'll just, burn you from the cockpit with my beam saber. And then another lady dies same way, gets like concussed, burned to death. And I remember at one point, the main character is running to the crashed mech with his with a fire extinguisher, screaming the lady's name. He trips over himself and just realizes that she's been in that thing for 10 minutes. She's not being extinguished at this point, and he just starts bawling and shit.
No.
But yeah, Gundam Info, the YouTube channel may very well have complete playlists, but it looks like some of it is going to be from the movie compilation, so it might not all be like like
I was able to procure a few episodes of Zeta for my LOGH video that I did. So,
Ooh.
yeah. So yeah, there was a lot of full episodes of a lot of different shows. So I mean, there's a lot of stuff on YouTube. I'm surprised.
Iron-Blooded Orphans, any good?
I only watched the first 8 episodes and I stopped. It's different, but I never finished it. I haven't watched. What's funny is to this day I still haven't watched Gundam Hathaway, and Hathaway and it's supposed to be part 1 of 3, and the second part. So the first one I think came out in 2021. So they're finally coming out with the sequel in 2024, and then the third part is supposed to come out after that, which is basically, and Hathaway is based off of the Tomino novel Hathaway's Flash, and my friend Steven was familiar with the story. He actually told me how it ends, and it's
I kind of bet a spoiler into that too.
Yeah, so it's another it's pure Tomino. It's very tragic, and it's just something that it's just something that like you feel for the character of Bright, who was part of Gundam from the very beginning. He was in the original Gundam. He was he was an ensign that becomes command base because all the older officers got killed. So he got promoted to, like, I think he ultimately got promoted to lieutenant. Then he was in Zeta. He joined the AUG, the anti-Earth group, and everything. He was captain of the Agama, and then he continued his role in Double Zeta, and then Char's Counterattack. He was part of the Londo Bell Force, and of course we meet his family. So we meet with, like, he marries Mirai from I think she's communication
Mirai
officer in the original kind of Mirai Yashima, and then they have 2 kids, and of course one of those kids is Hathaway. So
he learns the lesson, like, that he should have maybe spent more time at home. But being a I think that's sort of what part of the resolution to Hathaway's Flash is, like, he spent a lot of time serving, or what have you, and maybe that was too much.
Hathaway, like, he left Hathaway alone to his own devices in Char's Counterattack, to the point where Hathaway just got into a mobile suit and just without any supervision, launched himself into the battle. And he's the one that kills Chan. He's the one that kills Chan because he witnesses Chan killing Quest, the other girl, the girl that ran off with that he had the hots for, that ran off with Char. So, and that was, I was like, oh, damn, dude. And then of course, like, he became a terrorist. I mean, Hathaway is about him as a terrorist. He's part of a terrorist organization called Mafti, and he goes by another name. And I'll spoil it right now. He gets caught, and his father is still, part of the Federation, head of the Federation forces, and he doesn't know that because Hathaway goes by another name. He doesn't know that this terrorist is actually his son, and he signs the execution orders. Yes. Yeah.
That's like the typical Tomino irony right there. Oh my God, that guy, that man.
Yes. My friend told me this. I was like, damn, God damn you, Tomino. But like the reason why Tomino made these shows so dark was, he fucking hated Bandai. He hated the fact that they wanted him to make these shows to sell toys. He hated that. That's why he made Gundam so freaking dark, just to put something, just to kill off characters. But not only that, but one thing my friend did, and, like, Tomino gets asked a whole bunch of questions. He does a lot of Q&As, and he literally tells people, like, don't buy this shit. Don't buy my product. Like, this my shit sucks. Like, don't do it. Don't do it. And then you have all these fans. You have all these Gundam fans. Like, Gundam fans are the nerdiest of the anime. Like I went to an anime convention. There's a whole bunch of panels. You have your Shonen Jump group, you have your Sailor Moon group, and then you have your Gundam group. And the Gundam group is just like the nerdiest of the nerdiest guys, like, all time. And they ask the most obnoxious questions to Tomino. And Tomino is just like, I don't fucking care. He has a Harrison Ford type response. He's like, I don't know. I don't fucking care. But my friend actually went to see him in New York, and he asked him like like he didn't even ask him a question. He was just like, I appreciate the fact that after watching your show, I've learned to appreciate life even more as a result. And that was something that Tomino was actually impressed with, because usually Tomino is just like dismissive of fans because he's a dick. He's a dick. And that's why fans like him, because he's a dick.
Sometimes, yeah, it works. I mean, no F is given, you know. But
yeah.
I mean, it's like sometimes people like they'll love your artwork, but they'll love it for the wrong reason. You're like, that was not my point at all. It is like on The Simpsons when Lisa Simpson meets Amy Tan at a book signing, and she like goes and gives this whole description of like the Joy Luck Club.
Yeah. And I actually saw that movie.
I haven't seen a movie, and I think I've seen parts of it. My mom was watching it years ago, but like Amy Tan basically goes, "That is not what the book was about at all. You shame us both." Like she just puts her head down in disappointment.
Oh.
But you know, like that stuff like that. So I can picture like, you know, a guy like Tomino. Now, what I heard was with Victory Gundam, it was around the time Bandai bought Sunrise, and so they wanted like toys. They wanted to make toys, so they were like, you know, forced to like introduce those weird like spider-like mobile suits, mobile armor, and the big like snake-like mobile armor. And some of these designs were like basically there so that they could sell freaking toys. And so I think Tomino's way to respond, I don't know if this is a real reason, but some people say his response was to make a Kill 'Em All series as like the FU to the, you know.
Yeah, and I mean, and then of course the rumor was also that he was suffering from like major depression in that period in the early 90s.
They say that about the guy who did Evangelion too, and a friend of mine said he was
Hideaki Anno. Yeah,
I heard he was smoking crack, but I don't know if that's true. That's what I heard.
I don't know. I don't know. But like he was so like, even working on the you're familiar with the fact that they're doing these. They did rebuild films, Evangelion. So like
yes.
So he was so depressed after making that third film. So they were playing 4 films, and then after the second film, it goes off into a totally different direction. Like there's this time gap that didn't exist in the original show, and well, he makes this movie, things change, and then after that, he's just like, you know, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this I don't want to do the next movie. I'm going to go fuck off and do Shin Godzilla. So Hideaki Anno puts the production of the 4th and final rebuild of Evangelion film on hold so that he can recover from his depression and work on something fun like Shin Godzilla. So the 2016 Shin Godzilla movie was made at the expense of the 4th movie. So once that movie was done, then they went back to production on the 4th movie. And I think the 4th movie finally came out, the final film. The first rebuild film came out in 2007. The second one came out in 2009. The third one came out in 2012. The last one came out in 2021.
It's really drawn out, you know, and like, I mean, how do you interpret those? Do you see them as like an alternate timeline? Like, how would you treat those? I see them as an alternate.
It's an alternate. It's an alternate telling. It's an alternate timeline. I mean, there's some the beginning of it has some similarities, but it goes off into a wild new direction. Like it's like, because you have the original series and you have the original episodes 25 and 26, and because they ran out of budget, they did some weird shit where you're in Shinji's mind at the end. And then he decides to, hey, let's go through with the human instrumentality project, and let's all turn into orange juice. And that's how and he makes that decision. And then the final thing is he sees everybody clapping and cheering and actually affirming him, because if you haven't seen Evangelion, Shinji Ikari is basically a 13-year-old loner who has like little to no self-confidence, and he is in himself. He doesn't see any value in himself, and his father treats him like shit. Like his father, Gendo, who is the head of the NERV, who the government organization that is like the last line of defense against these angels, these kaiju angel. They call them angels, and they name them after like
like
angels
in
the scripture.
Yep.
And I mean, like, dude, like there's Adam's an angel. Lilith's an angel, and you have the lance of Longinus, the lance that pierced Christ, after they took him off the cross. There's a lot of Judeo-Christian. I mean, they call it Evangelion, evangelical. I mean, I noticed that when I went to Best Buy back in like 2004, 2005, and I'm watching this series for the first time, and I think it's the first time I've ever watched it. I'm like, what the fuck just happened? Like, what the fuck is going on here? And then they came out with End of Evangelion was the alternate version. My buddy got the DVD, so I watched that with him. That was even bigger mindfuck. Like, what the fuck is this? We got to see like because the End of Evangelion is an alternate episode 25 and 26, but there's some action, like there's some fights in it. But even that is just like, what the fuck is going on here? So
there was something, yeah. It was very interesting how, like, when they ran out of the budget, like, people supposedly wrote angry letters to Hideaki Anno.
He put them in the movie. He put those angry letters in the movies. Like, we're gonna, if you don't make it again, we're gonna, it's like death threats. They were giving Hideaki Anno death threats. And they put him in the movie. It's so funny.
Guys, man, but it was true that like, those episodes were a bit of a mind f. I mean, like, it was like. Yes. What is going on here? I'm seeing pictures of real life. This is like the Family Guy episode when Peter Griffin does shrooms and everything looks like real life. And you go, oh my God, I'm freaking out. Whereas when you and I do shrooms, not that we do shrooms, but I'm saying if we did it, we might see cartoons.
You bring up Family Guy. This was something I wanted to include today, but I haven't had time to. You're a New Yorker. You're a New Yorker, DJRonnieG, right?
Hey.
So one of the earliest Family Guy episodes is a joke about New Yorkers. They go to Rhode Island to see the leaves. And they call them the leafers. Is that a real thing?
I don't know, but it wouldn't surprise me if, like, especially New Yorkers who, like, like I remember my brother, he married like a yuppie basically, right? And like she seems to like doing those weird activities like normal people do pumpkin picking, bad example, but you know what I mean? Like those things that people do, like going to the fucking horse track or like as a hobby, like literally you go to the horse track and you dress up like you're from the 1940s for like a day. And maybe some people like from Williamsburg and Lower Manhattan, maybe they like to do that. But I mean, you can go to upstate New York. You don't need to go to Rhode Island to look at freaking foliage. I mean, hell, I live in Staten Island. That is the 5th borough of New York, and we have some wilderness over here for an island. We got a fair amount of trees, and you got like bike paths and hiking paths and things on the top of very tall hills. In fact, I believe Staten Island has some of the highest land on the eastern seaboard. And so, you got some interesting, got a couple of, like, most of it is not picturesque, but you got a couple of nice looking things here and there. And I don't need to leave this area to see foliage. That's one thing I don't need to leave here to see, but it wouldn't surprise me, but I don't know. I don't know the truth to that question. I mean,
okay, all right. I just had to ask because I was watching the clip, and it's one of the funniest. It's one of the funniest of early Family Guy. They're like, we got to get out of here. We got to get out. The leafers are coming. The leafers are coming. And then they come.
That a bunch of New Yorkers showing up in numbers and kind of just ruining the vibe of a beautiful place. Like I can picture loud people talking and
they're all they're all talking in their Italian, the Italian accents and all that. They're like we look the red like the sauce of my mama's marinara, and then the brown like the people I don't let in my cab. And then they're like, they said that in that episode.
That would be a early thing to do.
This was early Family Guy. And then they go to church, and then all the New Yorkers are in the church, and like my cousin or my coworker from New York, Father Sapienza, and then he's like God is good. God is good, and if you are not, he's gonna come down there and bust your freaking skull. Amen. And then he does a sign of cross and all that. And then some of the New Yorkers in the church are like, your God's now tougher than me. And then the other guy's like, you can't talk to the Father that way. And then they're about to get into a fight. And then Peter tries to intervene, and he's like, hey guys, we have the Patriots game. Come on, we got to get this over with. Got to get church over with. And the New Yorkers like, the Patriots suck. And he's like, blasphemy. And he takes the holy water, throws it on the guy's face, and the guy's face is melting. And then it cuts to a university saying, this professor says, holy water, where's the sulfuric acid I ordered? that was funny. See, that is when Family Guy was good.
Yes, it was pretty good back then. You're right. Oh my god.
I hope the reenacting was up to snuff. If I would have showed it, I probably would have got hit with something. So
I think it evoked the imagery quite well. I think so, at least. I mean, I don't know if the chat would beg to differ, but I'd like to think that we got people who are amused here. And speaking of which, but you know what my most popular YouTube video is? You're not gonna believe this. This. Senpai, end of Evangelion. All it is, it's a 7-second clip where Ibuki is saying, Senpai, Senpai, Senpai! And then she turns into LCL. And like, in 6 years, I have 79,000 views on this video. So somehow I made this something that's might as well be a short. Yeah. Effectively, it's a short. It just doesn't count as a short.
Just make sure YouTube doesn't, like, a lot of people have been putting up shorts, with stuff, and they like say, oh, you're using someone else's content or something. So you gotta be careful with that.
Oh yeah, well I'm not, like, in this case, like I said, I'm not reproducing this. I'm gonna leave this as it is because I mean, it hasn't flagged anything in 6 years, and I don't plan on doing any. I'm not gonna play it back on your stream, for example. That's for sure.
Oh no, yeah. Oh, that's fine.
But like 200 comments. I get comments from Russia once in a while. I get comments from around the world. I get jokes. I get people asking what the hell is going on and people answering them.
I was really happy a couple weeks ago. You know why? Or maybe it was last week. I got a comment from Japan for my Legend of Galactic Heroes. Cool. Yes, and I think and the person was telling like, I think this person was older and said they watched it when it came out initially. It was awesome. Like I thought it was really cool. Maybe I'll share what he said.
That's so cool. But I don't have any Japanese comments here. But did they write in kanji and you had to translate it, or did they write in English?
Actually, no. It's in English, so I guess they probably probably translate. Let me see.
Some people know how to speak English in Japan, but especially business people sometimes have to learn it.
Yeah, and this video is doing really well. Like, it's got it's 284 likes, which is a lot for me. Let me see if I can find that. Okay, right here. All right, it says the user, and I thought, I don't remember what it is, but this is what it says. Hi, I'm a Japanese. I first saw this when I was in high school. After seeing episode 82, I can't get over from the shock for about a month. So episode 82. You've seen the show. You know what happens. I know what happens.
I think I know what happens there.
For the sake of people who are watching, who are probably watching this for the first time, we're not going to say what happens.
Yeah.
Every time I see that episode, I shed tears. I won't say why. By the way, is there an easy way, such as a streaming service, to watch this in Europe or in North America? I want to recommend this wonderful work to who says they are interested in Japanese animation. But at the same time, I think I have to tell them how you can watch it. Maybe with English subtitles. Maybe we can't make these kind of huge chronicle truly into animation. This animation was made when the Japanese economy was in peak. After that, the long depression came and the animation industry went to cost reductions. The new version of the animation, The Legend of Galactic Heroes Dai Nue These, is a truly animated work from the original novel. But it has reduced many episodes and supporting characters from the book because of the limitation of budgets. The original series of the animation is widely applauded today. Some call it the Legend of the Galactic voice actors, since most of all the famous voice actors and actresses appeared in it. But in the same time, it was criticized from the novel fans because it was adapted a lot. Maybe that's why they decided to make a new one, but the situation seems not so well. So I basically responded saying, I'm like literally like, thank you so much for sharing this. Arigatou gozaimasu. And then the way to watch in the United States is through the streaming service High Dive. And I said, I agree on Dai Nue These, the remake. It's more in line with the book, but it looks like a generic modern anime series, lacking the major gravitas that the original series had. And I say that episode you said shocked me too. I said the only thing that can compare is Game of Thrones and the Red Wedding scene. That was shocking to me. And I said this show is way better than Game of Thrones in my opinion, and I think he left the like. But that I was so happy, like I was so happy to get a comment from Japan. I thought that was
that's cool. Transcendental right there.
Yes. And to hear him say that was, I assume it was a guy. I'm assuming it was a guy, but I could be wrong. I don't want to misgender someone, so I take responsibility.
Just like my turtles, I misgendered them for many years.
So, but
But
yeah,
you know,
we're
like, you know, it's because you got me into Legend of the Galactic Heroes that I bought this $200 Blu-ray. Now, I had some trouble at first because like adding subtitles, but I think I solved it. I just haven't continued, but I'm gonna resume that effort, and then I got to decide if it's worth it to buy this version or the blue box edition because I found out these are.
okay. There is a blue version I've seen on
And I gotta
Amazon.
find out if that one is better mastered or whatever. But you know, long story short, that's something I'll do. You know, at some point in my own time, and then I'll share my findings with the greater world because there's no affordable way to get it. Like the edition you bought is unattainable. You got to pay like if you're lucky, get it used from somebody for like $1,300 now, like something like that. So that $800 has gone up because you know it's a scarce product. I mean, it's a uniquely serial. Each one had its own serial number on it and everything. You know. So whatever, no big deal, you know. But yeah, I recommend it, and I did paint my ship a little bit more. Just to touch on that, I know you're ready to wrap up, probably. You know, I just want to show that.
So which one is this? Is this Young's ship?
Yeah, this is Young's ship, and it would be the flagship. Where is it? There's another picture of it right there. That's the flagship Hyperion, which I believe it's a Hyperion class ship.
Yeah.
And this is like the only time I paid like $28 for like a downloadable 3D model. You print out the front standing up on the printer bed like this.
Yeah.
And you print out the back standing up, which is a little bit of a trickier part to print. And then you can glue them together. Now, I want to print it bigger. And then next time I do it, I should be able to do a better job on the paint job. The color mixing was fine. Just getting it to go on smooth. Maybe I'll airbrush it next time. But normally you do thin coats and you lay them on successively, but I've been trying to go with thicker coats because with 3D printing you usually have these like lines for each layer.
Yes.
So I want to hide that. I don't want it to look like a 3D print. And then once I do that, I'll redo the antennas. You know, I just wanted to make sure if I could put the antennas in. And yeah, they go in. They're very sturdy. So once you put it on a stand, they should, and cut them to the right size. I'll do the rest of the antennas. There's a bunch of them. I believe this area was painted brown. A while ago, I sent you a video of Punkwaddle flying a Spartan or Spartanian, they call it.
Yeah.
And so what was cool was in that clip, you actually see it launching from. I know they have carriers.
So the Spartanians are basically the X-wings.
Yes.
Exactly
for the audience.
Legend of Galactic Heroes.
Yeah, and they're like ugly X-wings, which is fine because I think ugly is practical in space combat.
Yeah, probably is. Yeah.
And they have these large carrier craft that that has racks of them hanging from the bottom, but apparently some of them do launch from the Hyperion because there's a scene where you see the guy in the launch bay and then he kind of like goes down an elevator, then he comes out backwards, and if you pay attention to that scene, you see him coming out backwards, you see the side of the ship, and then you see him, zooming away from the ship. So it was like, that was the moment when I rewatched that, I just thought it was a cool scene, but while making the short clip of it, I realized, oh shit, he's launching from the side. So these are all individual launch cubbies, basically. Like, you got a number of these where Spartanians can launch out the side of the ship. And I believe this is mostly brown, so I painted it brown. I'm going to just finish this one up in its current state. Maybe put one more coat of light blue to get rid of that mistake I made over here. But after that, I want to print it larger. Now, problem was that I printed out a couple of larger ones. And on like one of them, this part of the ship came out snapped in half. And there wasn't really an easy way to fix it and make it look nice. So I was like, okay, there goes 12, 14 hours I won't get back, 3D printing. But I do intend, because I want to try to make a couple of nice ones, scale up the size, or maybe do a couple that are larger but go back to this size, and basically scale up production, because then maybe I could sell some of them, or maybe make them as a giveaway, to promote my channel. Or if I had like 4 extras of these, I would happily give you one to do with as you wish, But right now I'm still I have one good one. I have multiple parts that some of them are better than others, but I just got to print it from scratch. And luckily, we're going into the winter, which is really important because 3D printing is not fun in the summer.
No,
those machines kick off a lot of heat.
Yes, they do. I know.
So,
I've worked with them.
But anyway, briefly to answer your question from the beginning, what got me into astronomy? So yeah, got that telescope from a customer, got started on planets, and then, gradually just kept reading and learning. And one thing I would say is that it's not easy to get into the hobby. It requires patience. And I think why I had the tenacity to stick with it is because I always had, working with computers as a hobby, but half the battle, you gotta remember, a computer is just a tool. So it's not an ends to a means, right? It's like building computers can be fun, but what do you do with a computer once you build a powerful computer? Play games on it all day? It's like, I want to do something cool. Okay, you can edit video on a computer. I was too shy to do content creation until relatively recently, but then this is cool, like a telescope hooked up to a computer. You could do, that makes great use of a computer, because it's not as simple as taking a picture like we were talking about before. You got to take like multiple pictures in different filters. Then you can combine the colors together to get like a better composite or a complete true color image, or you could do false color. But also, what I didn't mention before was, let's say I take a picture with a single hydrogen filter. I don't just take one picture. You take like 40 pictures of the same target in hydrogen alpha, and then you stack them. And you do that because you can basically average out the noise in the image, and you can also get more contrast or more dynamic range, hence the term high dynamic range. And without doing that, you'll get like one shitty fuzzy image, right? But then when you stack them, you'll get more contrast, more detail, and it won't be fuzzy anymore. And so that's like, something that I sometimes will have to do on stream at some point, is sit down and just go through the processing, which is basically saying Photoshop. And sometimes you'll hear flat earthers bitch that NASA Photoshops a lot of their photos, but they're not really Photoshopping. It's that the Hubble takes the pictures on a black and white camera. Somebody has to do the image processing on that. Like, they have years of backlog data that some poor fellow or some happy fellow who's getting paid well has to sit down with. And I just wanted to share the answer to that. But that basically, I covered what I wanted to say about the astronomy thing, I think. Oh, I'm sorry. Can I share one thing briefly about dwarf planets?
Sure.
Okay. Absolutely. And I'll make this quick, because I'm sure, but this is something I wanted to share earlier because it was cool. So you mentioned before the solar system, how the Voyager probe was getting to the outer reaches. And so it went past the Kuiper belt.
Okay, that's what it's called, the Kuiper belt.
And you have the Oort cloud. The difference is the Kuiper belt is more like a big asteroid belt. The Oort cloud is more or less three-dimensional. It's a spherical thing. You got comets going up and down it. Mm-hmm. But, Pluto is passing through part of the Kuiper belt, and Pluto is considered a trans-Neptunian object.
Is it really hard to navigate through the Kuiper belt?
Nah, actually, what's interesting is a lot of movies, when you see asteroid fields, like in Star Wars, misrepresent them, because the reality is that in even our asteroid belt, things are spaced quite widely apart, that if you're standing on one asteroid, you're lucky if you'll even see another asteroid within visual range.
So, I mean, when you think asteroid belt, obviously everybody thinks, the asteroid belt in between Mars and Jupiter. Mm-hmm. Is Kuiper belt bigger than or bigger range than the?
It's certainly further out. I think it is a larger scale. I mean, just by virtue of the circumference of it, it would be larger. And so you have after the Kuiper belt, you have of the planets, so Pluto is like 280 year or 200 year orbit. Pluto, they call it trans-Neptunian because it does intersect or cross Neptune's orbit.
How much light, because of how far Pluto is from the sun?
I'd say that
how much sunlight does it even get?
I think at that point you're looking at a street light.
Like a street light?
The sun looks like a single street light, more or less. I mean, I may be exaggerating a little bit, but it's not much. It's certainly not.
So it's extremely dim on its brightest.
Yeah. And they did make a probe that, I think NASA had a shortage of plutonium. So they did make a probe that had really efficient solar panels that could work all the way out to Jupiter. But it required very meticulous effort to make sure it would create enough electricity to do it.
Now, is Pluto considered, this is going to be a dumb question, is Pluto considered an exoplanet?
Well, it's not an exoplanet, but people also question, is it a planet? And the reason that Pluto was knocked down from being a planet until they brought it back for people's sensibilities, because people got emotional about it for dumb reasons, is because if you call Pluto a planet, you kind of have to call other planets a planet too. So, for example, there's a planet called Sedna, which is either Sedna or Eris is about the same size as Pluto and the same mass. And so at that point, it's why aren't we calling those planets? And part of the reason you can use it as an excuse is that Pluto is in a much tighter orbit. And one thing that the pictures of the solar system diagrams never convey is the sheer scale of it. So in this email, I actually have 3 different levels here. So, for example, in this picture alone, everything inside of Jupiter's orbit is not to scale at all. If I was to show Jupiter to scale, it wouldn't even fit on my screen at this point. Oh my God, did the battery die in my mouse just now?
Oh no.
I have batteries. It's kind of funny how that works out. I'm just gonna try. Okay. Well, anyway, I can change batteries. I can use the keyboard. So anyway, yeah. But the scale where Jupiter, where like everything inside of the yellow line where Jupiter is, or the orange line, is not to scale, and it's just like that part of the solar system alone wouldn't fit on the screen, much less the rest of it. So they have to misrepresent the scale to some extent. And when we get down here, you'll notice that we have a speculated location of Planet 9, which we don't know if that's really where Planet 9 is. It's speculated because of the sheer mathematics of it. I have batteries in here. Well, whatever.
Right, we're really hearing your.
I know. I got to mute to do that. So anyway, you can see to the left side of the screen how we got like, all these other objects with numerical names, and then you got Sedna in there. So if anything, Pluto's not an exoplanet, it might be a dwarf planet. It is a dwarf planet, although they decided to redefine what planet is. Now, here's another diagram. Now, once again, like you can see Uranus in the middle of this, right? And like the scale is completely way off once again, but that's because that's the only way we're going to fit. We can see Pluto in there. It's sort of at the top right below Ixion. On the top right, you got Maki.
The top right below where?
Ixion. So the topmost object in the graphic.
Yeah. I guess he muted.
The topmost object is Ixion, Ixion, and it's like one of the dots that are highlighted. You should be able to see.
Okay.
You see something like that? So anyway, yeah, so Pluto is right below Ixion, and then Uranus is right below Pluto in this diagram. But throughout this, you got all these other names. So here's the far left side, where my mouse pointer is on that orbital track. There's Eris. And basically what I'm getting at is some of these outer objects are on highly elliptical orbits. And so, you can see Sedna is below Eris, right under the G in DJRonnieG. You can see Sedna. And some of these objects will go in and out of the Kuiper belt. And I remember a while back, some conspiracy theorist guy was speculating that like the story of the Tower of Babel was related to like an object, like a large object that would go to the outer solar system. And every like, some of these things are on like 10,000 year orbits. So you go from Pluto on like a 200-year orbit, and other objects are on 10 or 15,000 year orbits. So what if you had a really massive object that on the far end of its orbit, it's way, way out there, but then when it gets near us on the near side of the orbit for a period of time, it causes earthquakes or some cyclic cataclysm. Maybe it's the answer as to why we see recurring, cataclysms in the fossil record every... Oh, bummer. Now my mouse wants to work. Okay, well, that's good. Does it work? Does it want... Oh, okay, so it wants to make a... That's brutal. Yeah, still looking for a battery there. But yeah, so anyway, if you look up some of the dwarf planets, you got a planet called Maki. You got Haumea, and I'll do a live stream about this again of my own just to show you. But like at a glance, can I do that? Can I use the keyboard to navigate Google? Yeah, kind of. You got like this oval shaped one. I mean, I'd say just Google it on your own time. I shamefully don't have the benefit of a mouse pointer at this very instant.
Okay, that's fine.
But anything you want to add? I don't want to hold you up. I know it's probably a school night for you or something. But if there's anything else you want to ask or anything else you want to throw in, let me know.
No, I mean this was a great stream. Thanks for doing this. This was a lot of fun.
Oh, no doubt, it was an honor. I also had fun.
All right, great. So the last thing I want to ask, and that's what I ask everybody: what do you got coming up? Plug yourself.
Well, what I got coming up is I'm gonna do a live stream where I change the batteries in my mouse. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, and I have Panasonic rechargeable batteries in here. Well, you saw some of what. There we go, found them. So you saw some of what I've been doing lately, and I'm gonna keep doing some of what I've been doing. Which sometimes I'm working on my gunpla, and it's an opportunity to just have a chill and chat stream. And the only thing I haven't been doing is aggressively inviting people to join. But if somebody in the chat asks for a restream link and I don't plan on being anywhere within an hour, I'll generally be happy to share that, let other people join, and so the other thing is that I've been noticing that not everyone streams on Monday nights and Sunday nights, and so maybe that's my opportunity to find a time slot, like a evening show or something like that, so I may make a habit of doing Sundays or Mondays. I just got to keep myself in check, not stay up till midnight when I have to be at work up at 5 a.m., for example, you know. But
Yeah.
I was having surprisingly a decent amount of fun doing that. Like, so I think we're going to see more of that. When there's not anything to look at on the telescope, when there's no astronomy to be had, I do think I will be expanding more on things like this, because I mean, it's just fun to talk about. So what I was trying to do with my mouse pointer before was, you know, like show like how like we had these objects in wide orbits, and then you have these other elliptical orbits here. So everything that we know is here, like in this little area where my mouse is. So that's like the obscene scale of our solar system when what we're talking about. And here's like another one. Like you got the, I think the asteroid belt, Kuiper belt, and you got some crazy shit on an ultra wide orbit. And then here's the weird thing. So now we got like planets like on these diagonals. So as they lose gravitational influence from the sun, we got things that are on like these, like they go off of the plane of the ecliptic, which is like a flat plane or a disc shape. And there's just stuff that's some of the stuff that I intend on talking about. And I'd say like, you know, real quick, now that I can actually use my mouse, I can show what I was talking about before. So here's like a brief list of popular dwarf planets. And you can see like Haumea has an oval shape. It looks like an egg. Eris, which is who Loki is marrying this week, I believe, of Loki's Morning's Mischief. I hope they have a good wedding. But no, jokes aside, Eris of Chaos, right? But like,
oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So
everybody wish Loki, you know, wish Loki well.
Yeah, I wish him well, and Skull, and Tuck and Roll,
And roll.
and like, you know, so you got like these like weird objects. You got Maki, but bottom line is that somewhere between like Pluto, Eris, and Sedna, those are like basically similar in mass. And then here's one, Ceres. Notice how it looks like a sphere. You watch The Expanse.
Yes.
Ceres is an object in an asteroid belt, but it has a bit in common with planets. In fact, Ceres is a dwarf planet. It's not just some shitty rock like Axis. It is a dwarf planet. Well, not the Axis is shitty. So that's some of what I'm going to be doing on my channel, including like I was playing Call of Duty Infinite, what was it? The space one, Space Infinite Warfare, and you know, I'll probably stream some of that. I definitely have to upload a video on how to add subtitles to Japanese anime, because I did a whole, like, I actually recorded a whole video on how to add subtitles to the Macross movie, Do You Remember Love? And I didn't upload it because I wanted to combine that with the Legend of the Galactic Heroes video, but it turns out the process of adding subtitles to Legend of the Galactic Heroes is a little bit different. Yeah. So I figured we'll have you know, that. So that's actually in the pipeline for actual upload, is a guide on how to add subtitles to a Blu-ray that doesn't have subtitles. Of course, you know, you can't add it to a read-only disc, but you can, you know, store it on your computer and watch it on your TV with subtitles, or you can use the subtitles that you edit and use them on a temporary basis if you add them to VLC Media Player while playing it off of the disc. Those are some of the things I went over in that particular video. That will be coming up. And I take a request, you know, if someone posts like, how do I do something in OBS? I may very well demonstrate it if it's something that, you know, I already know how to do, or something I can use on my own time. But right now it's just been building Gunpla, hanging out, and like I said, like clearly I have a whole bunch of pictures of the solar system that represent the scale, and I think I want to speak on that more, because dwarf planets are kind of cool. People, you know, they're like unloved. People don't talk about dwarf planets enough, but they matter.
I agree. They do. Hashtag dwarf planets lives matter.
Yeah, dwarf planets. DPM. Wait.
Dwarf planets matter. No lives. Get rid of the lives. Sorry, scratch that. So
yeah, they don't. What is this about lives here?
I mean,
all planets matter. Stop. I love how like or stop hating planets. Maybe, you know, as they say. And also book reviews. Like I was recently reading some Larry Niven work, and this is like from the book The Integral Trees and the Smoke Ring, and I should probably do a proper book review on that, because I have a series of pictures that I could talk about, you know, everything in that book. And then what was the other things? Like, just I really should be doing more book reviews, because I mean I've read enough books recently. Yeah, so that's some of what I have in my mind, but literally in the pipeline is I'm just gonna try to keep a consistent streaming schedule, and right now I may actually make a habit of maintaining a consistent time on Sundays or Mondays, and everything else will be free for all. I stream whenever I want at random times for the most part. But I'm seriously thinking about just doing the Monday thing or Sunday thing on a consistent basis, because maybe I can add value to this community in that manner.
Oh yeah, you absolutely do. You do add quite a bit. I mean, I don't think anybody talks about the stuff that you talk about, and you've impressed everyone in the chat today. So this think you're a great guest. I'd love to have you on again. But yeah, DJ RonnieG, thank you for taking the time for almost 3 hours. This felt like a very quick stream. Thank you for doing this. So what's going on for me is well, Wheel of Time's over. So thank God. So I won't be on. I mean, I've been on Prophet's streams quite a bit talking about Wheel of Time. I might still do a few, in the few weeks because there's still a lot to talk about. Like they completely destroyed the second book, The Great Hunt. But what's next for me? There's some video. I'm trying to write a 3,000 sub milestone video. It's basically a don't give up type of a video. I know a few people have done videos like that. I'm basically trying to define what stay corporeal means because I always say stay corporeal. So I wanted it to be something positive and something that people can I don't know, look to. I guess I don't know. But that's what I'm currently writing, and then because it's October and we're approaching Halloween, Serial Horror Chat Season 2 is gonna start tomorrow. So I managed to get, or me and Dread Roberts are going to be talking about The Fly, the classic 1986 Jeff Goldblum, Gina Davis, David Cronenberg directed The Fly, and that's going to be tomorrow. And then there's going to be a few more. Serial Horror Chats that I have scheduled. I have one scheduled with Alex the White Cloaks. I have one scheduled with Pops, and I have one scheduled with Fanzine. Fanzine is just awesome. Like if I'm going to talk about horror, I always have to have Fanzine on. So Fanzine, we're going to be talking about American Werewolf in London. Alex, we're going to be talking about the original Exorcist, and Pops, we're going to be talking about Carrie, 1976. So I might do a few more serial horror chats with other people depending on their availability and everything. But that's what's coming up for me. So but yeah, so I actually made a special little video segment, a little clip of who's going to be on next time on Chillporeal, and then you'll get the outro. So everybody, take care, have a good night, stay corporeal, and well, let's see who is going to be coming up next. Everybody, good night.